This video continues with Chapter 40, One New Semester, New Classmates. Marvel, Awakening the Universe. Chapter 40, One New Semester, New Classmates. Chapter 40, One New Semester, New Classmates. After Hawk said this, he could clearly feel his thighs tighten again. He actually accepted Gwen's hint. Obviously, George's question was a trick question. Who is George Stacy, the sergeant of the 19th Precinct of the New York Police Department? If Hawk thought Spider-Man was a vigilante, then in George's eyes, that was no different than speaking up for criminals. So Gwen's reminder just now was to tell him not to fall into the trap and answer according to George's identity. But if he said that, he would have really fallen into George's trap. If Hawk described Spider-Man as a criminal, he would probably become a flatterer in George's eyes. So this question seems to be a problem. But in fact, it is a problem that no matter what choice he makes, it will be a wrong problem in the end. Hawk chose either A or B. He jumped out. He is just a student now. He doesn't care whether Spider-Man is a criminal or a vigilante. He only cares about whether he can get a scholarship to New York University. That's it. If someone else had answered like this, it probably wouldn't have worked either, as it would have given George the impression that he was cunning. But Hawk's answer was just right. In a word, Hawk didn't believe that George hadn't thoroughly investigated him. He wasn't afraid of George Cha either, because that's what he said, and that's what he always did. The unity of knowledge and action. Nothing more than that. At most, he had never left New York City before, but he was frugal and suddenly left New York City for Maryland this year. But this matter is also easy to explain. He is still a young man after all. Besides, traveling is not about doing anything bad. Okay. At least when he was practicing in Maryland, he really didn't do anything bad. Besides, the federal government is governed by the states, so what does the bad things he did in Washington, D.C. have to do with him now in New York City? Following his answer, Sheriff George Stacy's eyes were a little surprised at first, and then he seemed to have thought of something and nodded, almost announcing the end of dinner. 9 o'clock in the evening. Gwen takes Hawk downstairs. She finally realized what was happening and looked at Hawk. You're very quick, Hawk. I didn't even realize Dad's question was a trap. Hawk laughed, because that's exactly what I thought. Gwen nodded. Okay, then you should go back early. Unfortunately, I can't take you home. Because she was under curfew. It wasn't George, but Helen. This was Helen's punishment for not telling Gwen anything and having the audacity to go to Maryland alone. In the past, Gwen was able to return home freely before 10 o'clock in the evening, but yesterday Helen reset the curfew and moved it forward from 10 o'clock to 9 o'clock. It's okay, I can get there quickly by subway. Okay, see you tomorrow. Well, see you tomorrow. Hawk nodded and watched Gwen return to the apartment building, before turning around and walking towards the nearby subway station. If the New York City subway during the day is a chaotic place, then the subway at night can be said to be a zombie meeting. You can't expect a subway system where fare evasion is so easy to achieve to be strictly regulated. So, New Yorkers usually only choose to take the subway at night when absolutely necessary. Hawk is fine though. On his way back to his apartment on the subway, he knocked out a jerk and chased away 2 hippies with dreadlocks who came up to him singing and dancing. He made it home safely, albeit with some close calls. As for why we say there were 2.5 hippies singing and dancing, it's actually quite simple. One of them had an Adam's apple as big as a hippie's, but her breasts were equally enormous. And so, 2.5, no problem. After returning home, Hawk looked at the message sent by Gwen, replied, and then went to bed. School starts tomorrow. Go to bed early so that you can get up early tomorrow and take the free school bus back to school to report. When they came out of Gwen's house after dinner, Gwen said that she could pick him up from school tomorrow. But he refused. Because if he did this, Hawk would always have the illusion that he chose to date Gwen, just so that he could get a ride in Gwen's car in the new semester. Even though he knew he wasn't. But others may not think so. He may not care what others think of him, but he always has to consider what others think of Gwen. After thinking about it, Hawk suddenly understood why. Once a person has the ability, the country will help him find a wife even if he doesn't want to get married and have children. Although Gwen is not his wife, the principle is the same. The next day, Hawk got up early and just walked over and boarded the school bus when it arrived at a nearby stop. The driver was the bearded Hall who looked fierce on the outside, but was gentle on the inside. "Good morning, Hall." "Good morning, Hawk. Are you ready for your final semester?" "I don't graduate until next year, Hall." "Maybe you can get an invitation letter from New York University this semester. I have confidence in you." "Well, thank you, Hall." "You're welcome." After Hawk exchanged a few words with bearded Hall, he walked over to his old seat and sat down. The school bus was driving along the scheduled route. Every time it stopped, 1 or 2 students would get on the bus. When the bus arrived at the Forest Hills stop, this time, an acquaintance got on the bus. As soon as he got on the bus, Peter Parker, under the influence of his spider sense, immediately cast his eyes on Hawk, who was sitting alone in the last row by the window. The moment Peter got on the bus, Hawk withdrew his gaze and looked at Peter standing at the entrance and the man next to Peter who looked a little melancholy. "This is Harry Osborn, and this is also the original Spider Genius version of Harry Osborn, the same Harry Osborn who got to marry Jane first." At this moment, Peter had already said goodbye to his good friend Harry, who had returned from the UK this year and transferred to Midtown High School, and then led Harry towards where Hawk was. "Hawk." "Peter." "Hawk, this is Harry. He used to go to school in England, but he transferred to our school this year. He's in the 12th grade, just like us." "Harry, this is Hawk." After Peter came over, he greeted Hawk and introduced Harry to the side. Harry, who had not yet turned into the Green Goblin, was wearing a casual suit and smiled as he extended his right hand towards Hawk. "Hello, Hawk." "Hello, Harry." End of this chapter. Chapter 42, A New Semester, Old Chapter Titles. Chapter 42, New Semester, Old Program. As the school bus was heading towards Midtown High School, Hawk learned from Peter and Harry how the two met. Even though he always knew. When Peter's parents were still alive, they were researchers at Osborn Bioindustries. Both of them. Because of scientific research reasons, Peter's parents often take Peter to work at Osborn Bioindustries. It was at that time that Peter and Harry met and became good friends. Later, after Peter's parents died in a plane crash, although Peter rarely went to Osborn Bioindustry, Harry, who had already regarded Peter as a friend, would come to see Peter whenever he was free. The relationship between the two has never been broken, even when they were in high school. Although Harry went to study in the UK, the two still kept in touch by phone. This is not. Today is Harry's first day at Midtown High School, so he came to see his good friend Peter early in the morning. Harry was delighted to be reunited with his old friend, and they were even able to go to school together. Peter was also very happy about the reunion of old friends, because this was the best relationship he had heard in the past 2 months since the death of his Uncle Ben. Yes, Ben Parker died just a few days after the summer vacation started. Because of this, New York City had a new chivalrous Spider-Man. When Hawk heard the news, he was stunned and then offered his condolences. "Sorry, my condolences." "Fine." Peter smiled. His Uncle Ben taught him one thing with his own life. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. And so, these days, whenever Peter does something chivalrous, he can always feel that Uncle Ben is by his side, so he is not so sad. The school bus travels at a constant speed. About half an hour later, the school bus, which was full of students, drove steadily into the parking lot of Midtown High School under the guidance of Bearded Hall. As soon as the door opened, the students got off the bus one after another. "Hi, good morning, Gwen." "Good morning, Elle." "Gwen, long time no see." "Haven't seen you for a long time." "Gwen, please tell me we have a back-to-school dance." "Yes, it's customary, Mark." Gwen was in the parking lot at the moment, standing not far away, smiling and talking to her classmates who were getting off their cars or getting off the school buses that were coming from all over New York City. At this time, Hawk followed Peter and new classmate Harry, who got off the bus in front, and got off the school bus carrying his shoulder bag. Gwen's eyes lit up. Just as she was about to go forward, she saw a flash of light before her eyes, and suddenly there was a person in front of Hawk. A woman with thick, long black hair like a waterfall. Jennifer Checker. From Jennifer's body, played by Megan Fox, a sexy and charming girl with a pair of seductive fox eyes, she is the widely watched captain of the school cheerleading squad at Central City High School. Gwen subconsciously stopped and frowned. "Hey, Gwen." Mary Jane, who had just gotten out of her car, walked over to Gwen and patted her shoulder. "What are you looking at?" Mary Jane said, following Gwen's gaze. She also saw Jennifer, who was standing in front of Hawk, wearing cool clothes and showing off her perfect figure. Jennifer. Good boy, she hasn't given up yet." Mary Jane glanced at him and then looked away, shaking her head speechlessly. Does she really intend to achieve the feat of inviting Hawk to be her dance partner every semester for 4 years of high school? Gwen's voice was cold and clear. "Not every semester, huh?" Mary Jane was slightly stunned and subconsciously looked at Gwen. Gwen's tone was quiet. Jennifer also invited Hawk to the grade dance in June, but Hawk didn't agree. "You talk as if Hawk will be at the dance." Mary Jane replied, then suddenly froze, feeling as if she had discovered something, and turned to look at Gwen beside her. Gwen didn't say anything, but just narrowed her eyes and watched Hawk getting off the school bus from a distance. And also, that's the cheerleader Jennifer Chalk, who is happily greeting Hawk. "Hi Hawk, happy new semester." "Happy new semester, Jennifer." Hawk looked at Jennifer, who appeared in front of him like a flash as soon as he got out of the car, smiling at him with a pair of fox eyes, and greeted her with a smile. He probably guessed what Jennifer was here for. After all, in the past few times when new semesters started, Jennifer would appear in front of him first and ask the same question. But even though he knew it, he had no intention of taking the initiative. In a word, what if he answered first and it turned out that Jennifer didn't mean it that way? Jennifer used her seductive fox eyes to glare at Hawk. "Hawk, you refused me in 9th grade, you refused me in 10th grade, you refused me in 11th grade, and now it's 12th grade, your last year of high school. You can't refuse me again this time." As the captain of the school cheerleading team, Jennifer has no shortage of suitors. And she never missed a dance. But none of those male companions was Hawk. Maybe in 9th grade, Jennifer simply wanted to invite Hawk because she was attracted by his outstanding independence, melancholy, and handsome temperament. But after Hawk's first refusal, this matter seemed to have become an obsession for her. Although she also knew that Hawk was unlikely to agree. But what if Hawk agreed, it would only add to her charm? After all, in the past 3 years, Hawk has been recognized as never participating in any party-type activities. It's a pity that there is no such thing as a contingency. Hawk shook his head. "Jennifer, you know I'm not going to the dance. But if you go to the dance, you'll ask me to be your date, right?" "Yes, if I were to attend, but I won't." That's what I wanted, Hawk. Goodbye. That's the answer Jennifer wanted. What she can't get, no one else can get. That's enough. In this way, even if she fails to invite successfully, she will not suffer any loss. So after getting the answer she wanted, Jennifer came up to Hawk with a bright smile, kissed Hawk on the cheek, which left a deeper impression on Hawk, and then waved happily and left. Hawk looked at Jennifer, who came like a gust of wind, and then left like a gust of wind. He shook his head speechlessly, then looked at Gwen, who was standing not far away, and walked over. Gwen smiled as she looked at Hawk, who was walking towards them. "Invited you to the dance." You agreed." "No." "Oh." End of this chapter. Chapter 43, The Birth of Dr. Lizard. Chapter 43, The Birth of Dr. Lizard. Hawk and Gwen asked and answered questions. The tone is natural. Relaxed look. As they talked, they walked side by side towards the rest corridor. Behind, Mary Jane's mouth was as wide as it could go. Thick and greasy, thanks. What on earth did I miss this summer? Peter also felt a little dazed at this moment. He felt as if he understood something, but at the same time, he felt as if he understood nothing. Harry, on the other hand, looked at Mary Jane and tried to say hello. Mary Jane was Peter's neighbor. Before he went to England, Mary Jane was sometimes there when he went to see Peter. So Harry knew Mary Jane too. Harry thought for a moment, then patted Mary Jane on the shoulder. "Hey Mary, long time no see." "Hey Harry." Mary Jane turned around, glanced at Harry who had appeared, greeted him lightly, and then looked at Peter who was standing beside her. "Peter, do you know about this?" Harry froze. Wait, this reaction is wrong. Is this the right reaction to seeing an old friend? It's a bit too bland. Peter was also stunned. He met Mary Jane's shining gaze and was stunned for a moment. "What? Gwen and Hawk?" Mary Jane tried her best to suppress the gossip in her tone, resisting the urge to scream, and said to Peter hurriedly, "Aren't you Hawk's only friend in school? You should know when this happened." Peter was completely stunned. "When did I become Hugh Hewitt?" "Forget it, I'm too lazy to ask you." Mary Jane looked at Peter, who answered so unpleasantly, and her curiosity completely overwhelmed her reason. After saying something directly, she raised her foot and chased after Gwen, who had already walked ahead. She planned to listen to the gossip up close. But that's it. Mary Jane suddenly stopped, as if she thought of something, turned her head and saw Harry, who was also confused and felt that he might become invisible. Next second, "What?" After Mary Jane saw it clearly, she screamed, ran to Harry quickly, and hugged Harry, who still looked depressed. Harry, when did you come back?" Harry was happy. He looked at Mary Jane, who had let go of him, and just as he was about to continue the greeting, Mary Jane hugged him again. "I have something to do now, so I won't talk to you anymore. See you later." Obviously, at this moment, the return of a good friend from England was not as important as Mary's desire to get a glimpse of the gossip between her best friend and the school's most aloof man. Therefore, after Mary Jane finished speaking, she turned around again, looked at Gwen, who was about to walk into the lounge corridor in the distance, and hurriedly trotted to catch up with her. It was obviously impossible for Mary to chase Hawk and ask for gossip. And so, Mary spent the entire morning chasing after Gwen, looking pleading. There is only one central idea. "Please tell me more, just more in more detail, please, Gwen." Because today is the first day of the new semester, the schedule is a little more relaxed, and there are not even any classes scheduled for today. Everyone is busy with their own things, getting their course schedules, or going to their counselors to seek advice for the last semester. So Gwen was annoyed by Mary for the whole morning. At last, as the two of them were heading to the cafeteria, Gwen couldn't help herself when she saw Mary, who was still beside her and looked pitiful and eager to hear more gossip about her and Hawk's relationship. Gwen sighed. "No, is it strange that I'm with Hawk? What's so strange about that? He and I have been sitting next to each other in physics class since 9th grade, and we have the same counselor." "Come on, Gwen, that's Hawk." "So what? Don't you know what everyone says about Hawk?" "What?" This time it was Gwen's turn to be curious. Mary looked around and lowered her voice. "Everyone says that either Hawk is a pure steel straight man or Hawk is a crooked one." Gwen rolled her eyes. How is that possible? She suddenly thought of Hawk standing in the water in just a pair of shorts at the waterfall in Maryland. Crooked, Hawk is very straight. As straight as a baton. Wrong. What am I thinking about? Gwen shook her head, subconsciously shaking off the image of the baton in her mind, and then said to Mary in a serious tone, "Hawk is not crooked." Mary was stunned for a moment, then seemed to think of something and blinked at Gwen. The smile became a little ambiguous. "Have you tried it?" Gwen was stunned for a moment, then looked at the ambiguous smile on Mary's face and took a deep breath. Next second, she turned and left without saying a word. As expected of a dance student. Sewage. Too dirty. Mary looked at Gwen, who shook her off without saying a word, and hurriedly chased after her. "I'm sorry, Gwen, please forgive me." When Hawk arrived at the cafeteria, Mary was still trying to dig information out of Gwen. But Gwen turned a deaf ear. Mary saw that Gwen had become immune to her pleas and sighed. Then she saw Harry coming to the restaurant under Peter's guidance. Her eyes lit up instantly, and she said to Gwen, "If you don't tell me, I'll go find Peter to find out." As she spoke, Mary Jane stood up, and without waiting for Gwen's response, ran off to find Peter and Harry with her own plate. By the time Hawk sat down across from Gwen with his tray, Mary Jane had already left. Mary finished eating. Apparently, she couldn't get enough of the gossip from me, so she went to Peter. Gwen glanced at Mary, who had already pulled Peter to sit down, and shook her head helplessly. Hawk was a little confused when he heard this. What does this have to do with Peter? Gwen shrugged. Maybe it's because you and Peter spent last semester together in the old gymnasium, so this semester everyone thinks Peter is your friend. All right. After hearing this, Hawk also laughed out loud, but he was too lazy to refute anything. He grabbed the hamburger on his plate and started eating. Because she arrived at the restaurant early, Gwen had already finished her meal. Gwen leaned on the dining table with her arms around her shoulders, looking at Hawk, who was eating a burger. By the way, did you call Dr. Connors to thank him? Yeah, beat it. Hawk nodded, swallowed his burger, and then thought of something and said to Gwen, "When I called, Dr. Connors said there seemed to be a breakthrough in the experiment. He sounded very happy." Gwen blinked. Progress. Impossible. End of this chapter. Chapter 44 Capital is a monster and also creates monsters. Chapter 44 Capital is a monster and also creates monsters. What happened? Then I went to the laboratory yesterday morning. Hawk nodded. That was before I went to the library yesterday. He originally thought that Gwen had gone to Dr. Connors to cancel her leave in the morning. At the moment, did something go wrong with the experiment? The experiment went fine, but I heard there was a problem with the investor. You know that Dr. Connors' experiment was a collaboration between Osborn and the military, right? You said that last time. The military has withdrawn its funding. Gwen lowered her voice and leaned forward to say, Dr. Connors' experiment has been going on for almost 2 years, and there's been no results yet. As a result, the higher-ups at Osborn are starting to get impatient with Dr. Connors' experiments. Capital is real. They will sponsor the funds you need, and even provide you with venues to meet your requirements based on the pie you draw at the beginning. But if you fail to deliver the expected results to Capital, then Capital will abandon you without hesitation. Because stopping losses in time is a compulsory course for Capital. This is what happened with Dr. Connors' regeneration experiments. Not to mention that the military withdrew funding from Dr. Connors' laboratory last month due to funding withdrawal. Although the military said it was temporary, they would invest again when funds became available to keep Osborn Bioindustry going. But things are not peaceful inside Osborn Bioindustries either. There are rumors that Norman Osborn, who has been recuperating in his own manner since last year due to a strange disease, is now terminally ill and his time is up. This news is not groundless. Harry Osborn, who had been studying in the UK, returned to New York City this summer and began to get involved in company affairs with the help of Norman Osborn's personal secretary Felicia Hardy. This was a very obvious signal. Although the Osborn family controls the majority stake in Osborn Bioindustries. But in this era, when the old king is about to die and the new king is about to be established, there are always people who want to take advantage of this wave of change of dynasties to gain some benefits for themselves. Moreover, a new official has 3 things to do when he takes office. So at this juncture, some people propose to streamline the laboratories and abolish some laboratories that had not yet produced Capital results. Dr. Connors' laboratory was the first to be affected, as the military had its investment suspended due to funding gap. Although the military said it would wait for the next batch of funds from the Pentagon to arrive before resuming investment, who can guarantee that? After all, the credibility of the federal military is there. However, Osborn Bioindustry did not decide to withdraw its investment in Dr. Connors. Although the military funding was cut off, some of the previous funds still remained. And so, the doctor's lab staff has been reduced. 5 researchers were fired. Of course, there were some for me. I just heard about it yesterday, but since I'm working part-time, the fees aren't expensive. And I went to the laboratory yesterday, and Dr. Connors wasn't as happy as you said, so I was a little surprised when you mentioned this just now. Gwen recounted the recent developments in Dr. Connors' laboratory. Hawk didn't really care whether Dr. Connors' experiment would succeed, so he just listened. After Gwen finished, he shrugged and said, "Well, that's what Dr. Connors said on the phone anyway. Who knows if it will succeed?" Gwen also nodded. "I also hope that Dr. Connors' experiment will be successful." The two of them were just chatting casually. But the conversation was over after that. After Hawk finished the burger in his hand, the two got up and left with their plates. That concludes the discussion about Dr. Connors' lab. But they can end it, but the person involved in the conversation, Dr. Connors, cannot say that the topic is over and change to the next one temporarily. Because at this moment, Dr. Connors is about to be abandoned by Capital. Dr. Connors looked at the person who was standing in his office and brought the latest resolution of the board of directors. "Doctor, have you made up your mind?" "I don't know." "Doctor, you should understand." The middle-aged, elite white man representing the board of directors said with a warm smile, "The military has withdrawn its funding. Although they used the term temporarily, we all know what that means. The board originally intended to suspend funding for the lab as well. But doctor, your latest research has successfully helped your lab regain funding, but it's only just." Because Dr. Connors' latest achievement, the regenerated mice, gave the board of directors a glimmer of hope. But it was only a hint. Dr. Connors frowned. "So what does the board of directors think?" "Human experiments." "What?" Dr. Connors' eyes widened upon hearing this, and he looked at the middle-aged man. "I just extracted a serum that seems to be viable from the only mutated mouse, and I haven't had time to verify it yet. It's too hasty to conduct human trials now. Besides, where can we find willing test subjects?" The middle-aged man shrugged and said, "There are plenty of experimental subjects in the military hospital. Just use the name of the latest vaccine." He said it easily. After all, everyone does it. If you go to Burritt to conduct human experiments, you have to pay the local government. But if you conduct experiments on low-income people in your own country, you don't even have to pay. In a word, are people at the bottom human beings? No. Capital is profit-seeking. While maximizing profits, it also seeks to minimize costs. But Dr. Connors found it hard to accept after hearing it. "What? I don't agree. Time waits for no one, doctor. You don't have much time left, and neither do we." "But you don't need to know this. You just need to know that the board of directors is doing this for your own good. There will be someone dedicated to this matter. If it fails, doctor, you can pretend you know nothing. I'm not here to discuss this with you, doctor. This is a notice." After the middle-aged man finished speaking, he turned around and left Dr. Connors' laboratory. Now the top brass are saying that Norman Osborn will not live long, and the reason why Dr. Connors' regeneration laboratory was established is actually to research a cure for Norman Osborn's strange disease. And so, the middle-aged man was actually not wrong. They were now pushing for human experiments to be carried out as soon as possible. While helping Dr. Connors, they were also helping them. After all, there is only one emperor and one courtier. Who knows what Harry Osborn would do if Norman Osborn really died? Well known. Capital also likes stability, because only with stability can Capital make money steadily. But Dr. Connors is not Capital. After the middle-aged man left, he sat in his office chair. Like a statue. End of this chapter. Chapter 45, The Birth of Dr. Lizard. Chapter 45, The Birth of Dr. Lizard. Dr. Connors' eyes flickered. He sat blankly in his office chair, his expression looking calm, but in fact, he was struggling with his conscience. On the one hand, Dr. Connors also wants to conduct human experiments. After all, what has he been researching for so long? Isn't it to benefit mankind and save them from suffering from disabilities? But on the other hand, Dr. Connors knew very well that the current regenerative serum was still unstable. Because so far, only one, and only one, mouse has achieved the results he dreamed of after being injected with the regenerative agent. But the crux of the problem lies here. They don't know why they succeeded. Yes, it worked, but they don't know why, and they can't replicate it. Because they don't even know where the problem lies, and they can't find the problem, so naturally there is no way to replicate it. Medicine is rigorous and does not tolerate any carelessness. Especially when it comes to human experiments, let alone a problem, even if there is a slight confusion, it must be resolved before proceeding to the next step. And so, emotionally speaking, no one wanted to see the regeneration potion succeed more than he did. But from a rational point of view, the board's actions are undoubtedly playing with the lives of disabled soldiers. Dr. Connors was torn between his conscience and his desires at this moment. Angels and demons appeared in his mind. The angel told him that it was wrong to do so, and if something went wrong, God would not forgive him. But the devil told him that medicine was destined to require sacrifice. If he succeeded, even if he died and went to heaven, the angels would give him a seat. Dr. Connors sat blankly in his office. The sunlight coming through the window hit his face, and light and shadow continued to interweave. That's it. He sat in his office from the afternoon until nightfall. With the ringing of his cell phone, Dr. Connors, who was in a state of conflict between his conscience and his desires, was awakened. He grabbed his phone and opened the text message that had just been sent. Into the eye. Doctor, I'm on my way to the hospital. We trust you. Finished reading. Dr. Connors's eyes were unfocused. Next. A scratching sound. Dr. Connors immediately stood up from his seat and then walked towards the door with a determined look as if he had made some kind of decision. The camera responsible for monitoring the laboratory stayed quietly in the corner. The red light flickered. With a ding, the bioengineering mixer in the laboratory, which was responsible for cross-species, gene splicing, and fusion, was successfully opened, and a bottle of serum that looked green in color was taken out by Dr. Connors. I may not be an angel, but I definitely cannot be a devil. Dr. Connors looked at the bottle of regeneration potion in his hand, which was a fusion of mutant serum extracted from mice and lizard serum, and muttered to himself. Then, with a firm look in his eyes, he grabbed the bottle of regeneration potion and sat aside. After a while, Dr. Connors, sitting in the chair, looked at the syringe in his hand, took a deep breath, and then, without hesitation, directly stabbed the syringe into his right arm, which had lost his right hand in an accident, and then quickly pushed the syringe all the way to the bottom. Almost at the moment, he pulled out the needle. A feeling of dizziness without even a prelude suddenly came over him. Boom, doctor. Connors slumped headfirst onto the table in front of him. At the same time, at this moment, it seemed as if something was squirming inside the broken part of his right arm, trying to struggle out. It seems like bugs. A very small lizard. Gwen, who had finished eating and returned to her room, was on the phone with Hawk, recounting the amusing incident that had occurred while she was eating. Her 8-year-old brother had been startled by a lizard that had crawled out of nowhere. Hawk listened to Gwen's laughter on the other end of the line, feeling curious. Aren't you afraid? Hawk, Gwen said seriously, you forgot that the regeneration potion in our lab was inspired by lizards. There isn't much else in the lab, just mice and lizards. She is not a delicate little woman. She is a cold-hearted scientist who can drain the blood of a lizard without batting an eyelid, and can also dissect a mouse without batting an eyelid. Hawk suddenly realized and smiled. Gwen also smiled and then changed the subject. What about you? Have you finished your meal? No. Hawk looked at the fried chicken drumsticks he had just bought and said, I'm going to the rooftop to do some boxing. I'll eat after I'm done. There is no way. In the new semester, the old gymnasium was demolished and converted into a swimming pool. There are also a lot of people in the new gymnasium, especially today. After all, It is a new semester, and there are new ninth grade students, so there are even more people in the gymnasium. So Hawk simply thought about going home at night, doing some boxing on the rooftop, and then eating, taking a shower, and going to bed. Gwen listened to Hawk talk about his next plan, nodded, and then thought of something. "Hawk, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Why do you practice boxing every day? You are already good enough." Gwen said. The scene she saw, after passing through the forest, appeared in her mind. Hawk standing in the pool with his upper body naked. The waterfall that rolled back in front of Hawk. Gwen didn't know whether Hawk was the one who caused the backward waterfall. After all, she didn't see it with her own eyes. But she had no doubt that Hawk was capable of killing a bear with one punch. She saw this with her own eyes. That day, after seeing Hawk kill a bear with one punch, Gwen felt both relieved and frightened. After all, from the time she entered the forest to the time she found Hawk, she didn't encounter any wild beasts. You can imagine how lucky she was. Not right either. Maybe this is God's will. Gwen then thought of the unknown website that could provide her with Hawk's real-time location, even though Hawk's phone was clearly turned off. Just as Gwen was thinking about the unknown website in Maryland, Hawk fell silent after hearing Gwen's question. "Why do you still practice boxing every day?" "For..." Hawk was silent for a moment. A picture emerged in his mind, and after thinking about it, he gave an answer. "To protect myself and the people I care about." "Me?" Gwen listened to Hawk's explanation, her voice ringing clear in Hawk's ears. That day, she forcefully handed Hawk her beautiful cell phone for his personal use. And when Hawk didn't refuse, she felt like she had found the secret to getting along with Hawk. Hawk hadn't expected Gwen to be so straightforward. He couldn't help but laugh, then nodded heavily. "Of course." End of this chapter, Chapter 46, the recommendation letter that became a useless piece of paper. Chapter 46, the recommendation letter becomes a useless piece of paper. Second update. Hawk replied quickly, without hesitation. Obviously. Gwen was also very happy with his answer, and her voice became a little clearer and happier. After a while, the two lovers who had just officially confirmed their relationship a few days ago finally finished their long phone conversation and hung up reluctantly. Mainly because Gwen was reluctant to leave. Hawk also. Okay. He was also a little reluctant to leave. However, Hawk knew why he had had feelings for Gwen since 9th grade, but had waited until now to face up to these feelings. In a word, he didn't have the qualifications before, but now he has become stronger and has the qualifications. And so, whether it is to continue to become stronger or to continue to have this qualification, Hawk feels that he should work harder than before instead of slacking off. He may be very strong now, but if he slacks off at this moment, how long can this strength last? A year, or 2 or 3 years? The curtain of the Marvel Universe has been raised, so Hawk not only dares not relax, but instead feels a sense of urgency. So after Hawk finished talking to Gwen, he started today's mission of throwing 10,000 punches. In fact, there is no point in him hitting the sandbag now. But Hawk was not hitting the sandbag now. Instead, he was using this method to calm his mind, so that he could continue to search for the sixth sense that Hawk knew existed, but felt he could not touch no matter what. On the rooftop of the apartment, a sandbag hanging from a clothesline swung gently with Hawk's fists. Hawk's eyes were fixed on the sky. His mind was scattered, and he felt like he was searching for something the size of a grain of rice in the endless darkness. Until there were faint screams and shouts in his ears. Hawk's eyes quickly left the darkness, and when they came into focus, he subconsciously turned and looked in the direction of the Williamsburg Bridge where the screams and shouts came from. Swish, swish, swish. The space was shrinking rapidly in front of Hawk's eyes. In just a blink of an eye, Hawk, who was standing about several kilometers away from the Williamsburg Bridge, could see the scene happening on the Williamsburg Bridge with extreme clarity. The Williamsburg Bridge is a suspension bridge across the East River, connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn. Many people use this bridge to go to work in Manhattan during the day and return to the brook on the other side of the bridge to rest at night. So the Williamsburg Bridge is always very busy. Tonight was no exception. But now something unexpected has happened. Countless Manhattan white-collar workers who were stuck on the bridge were running and screaming as they heard the sound of vehicles being overturned behind them. Into the eye. A huge creature covered with gray-green scales and with a head shaped like a lizard was moving quickly across the tops of cars. As it shuttled back and forth, its equally strong long tail hooked up cars and threw them away as if they were nothing. It seems to be looking for something. This is Dr. Lizard. Hawk, who saw the entire scene, couldn't help but raise his eyebrows after he realized what was happening. At the same time, an idea came into his mind. Not how Dr. Connors became Dr. Lizard without the amazing Spider-Man reminding him. But, damn it, Dr. Connors' recommendation is no longer valid. New York University might recognize Dr. Connors' favor, but it definitely wouldn't recognize Dr. Lizard's favor. So, barring any unforeseen circumstances, the value of Hawk's handwritten letter of recommendation from Dr. Connors instantly plummeted to less than a piece of waste paper the moment Dr. Connors became Dr. Lizard. Even the stock market wouldn't dare to crash like that. Soon, Dr. Lizard, who is making his debut on the Williamsburg Bridge, seems to have found what he was looking for. An elite man in a suit and tie was hooked out of the car by Dr. Lizard's tail. The middle-aged man, holding the serum in his arms that was to be transported to the military hospital, trembled with fear as he looked at Dr. Lizard staring at him with a pair of green eyes. But he still mustered up the courage. "You, what?" puffed. Just as the middle-aged man opened his mouth, Dr. Lizard snatched the briefcase from the middle-aged man's arms with one claw, then swung his tail violently, and the middle-aged man flew out and was thrown onto the guardrail of the bridge. Next second, the steel cable passed through the middle-aged man's waist, cutting him in half. The middle-aged man was split into two and fell towards the river under the bridge with blood spurting out of his body. But that's it. Spider-Man. Pooh. The spider spirit makes a brilliant appearance. Peter, pulling the silk thread he had spit out, swung his body quickly in the air, then put his feet together and kicked Dr. Lizard, who seemed to be about to turn around and leave like a cannonball. Dr. Lizard staggered instantly after being kicked. After he stood firm, he turned his head to look at Peter, who was squatting on the roof with his hands and feet grabbing the roof. He opened his big mouth, his green tongue flying around, and roared at Peter. Next moment, Peter shot out a spider silk from his right wrist, and with a snap, it attached itself to the briefcase in Dr. Lizard's arms, and then he pulled it. Dr. Lizard was completely furious when he saw the briefcase slipping out of his hand. He hooked the cars beside him with his tail and threw them towards Peter one after another. The war between the spider spirits and the lizard spirits quickly broke out. Hawk, standing in his apartment, watched with great interest. But at this moment, he remembered something, turned around, and faced the sandbag. His whole body instantly turned into a shadow, and countless fist shadows landed lightly on the sandbag. 30 seconds later, Hawk, who had quickly completed today's 10,000 punch mission, breathed a sigh of relief, then looked towards the Williamsburg Bridge again, ready to watch the show without any psychological burden. But where's Dr. Lizard? Where's the spider spirit? What about people? Hawk turned his attention back to the Williamsburg Bridge, ready to watch the show, but was dumbfounded. But he soon noticed the water under the Williamsburg Bridge. Beneath the water, there seemed to be a shadow moving rapidly. High speed. Anyway, Peter, who followed Dr. Lizard on the swing all the way, finally lost track of Dr. Lizard when he was about to reach Roosevelt Island. It was too dark, and Dr. Lizard was really fast underwater. Peter stopped on the rooftop of a building, looked at the direction where he had lost Dr. Lizard, and shook his head. Just as he was about to leave and go home, he suddenly noticed something and came to the edge of the rooftop. Into the eye. He saw Hawk standing on the rooftop of a 10-story building not far away. Hawk smiled and squatted on the edge of the rooftop, waving at the spider spirit who was looking over here. End of this chapter. Chapter 47 The Lizardman with Hawk and #039 S Aura. Chapter 47 The Lizardman with Hawk's Aura, third update. Peter swung steadily onto the rooftop of Hawk's apartment. Wow, spider. Peter. Hawk looked at the spider spirit that had landed on the ground. Just as he was about to speak, he saw Peter pulling off his mask to reveal his true face, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. After taking off his hood, Peter smiled shyly. He now agreed with what Gwen had said before. Hawk, your acting is really not that good. Is it? Hawk was slightly stunned, then looked at Peter, who nodded seriously and shrugged. Okay, then I'll keep working hard. When someone says that his acting is not good, it may be that person's problem of vision. But if two people say, Hawk began to reflect on whether his acting skills were really that bad. Peter smiled and then talked about Dr. Lizard, whom he had just dealt with. By the way, Hawk, did you see what just happened? Part of it, but just when I was about to look, you and the lizard man disappeared. Hawk spoke the truth. He saw the beginning and the end, but he didn't see the process. But it's okay, you'll see it on the news tomorrow. Well known. The New York City media reacted extremely quickly. Less than 3 minutes after Dr. Lizard appeared on the Williamsburg Bridge, he saw 3 media helicopters belonging to different TV stations hovering over the Williamsburg Bridge. Peter was slightly stunned when he heard Hawk's words. He looked here subconsciously, and then looked in the direction of the Williamsburg Bridge, which was almost invisible to the naked eye. View from here. Peter looked at Hawk in shock. Hawk smiled and said, My eyesight is pretty good, but yours is pretty good too. Peter nodded subconsciously again. Indeed. If he concentrated, he could also see the Williamsburg Bridge clearly from here. Peter thought to himself, and then his eyes lit up. Then did you see where the lizard man ran off to? No. Okay. Peter sighed when he heard this. I didn't expect it to be so strong. It threw me out, and by the time I was ready to fight back, it had already jumped into the river. Hawk asked curiously, What do you think of its strength? Peter glanced at Hawk, thought seriously, then frowned and said, It's stronger than me, but not as fast or as flexible as me, but it's faster than me underwater. Understood. One punch stuff. There is no need for him to explode his little universe. Hawk listened to Peter's comments, thought to himself, nodded, and prepared to go back to bed. But at this time, Peter seemed to have thought of something and said to Hawk, however, This lizard monster gave me a familiar feeling. I was just thinking about what this feeling was when he threw me out. Hawk heard this and looked at Peter. Now, where do you think this feeling comes from? Peter nodded, then looked at Hawk. Hawk didn't say anything, waiting for Peter's next words, but when he saw the look Peter was looking at him after nodding, he was stunned at first, then reacted. You said I. How can it be? Hawk had a very absurd feeling. How could Dr. Lizard have his scent? He's only been to Dr. Connor's lab once. And even if there was a lingering scent from that handshake, more than 2 months have passed. How could it still be there now? He is not a goddess, and Dr. Connors is not a bootlicker. Nor is he like those bootlickers who are reluctant to wash their hands after shaking hands with their goddess. Peter looked at Hawk and said seriously, The last time I met you was in the old gymnasium, so I was particularly impressed by your aura. However, the aura of that lizard monster just now was very weak, so weak that it was inaudible. Otherwise, it wouldn't have taken me so long to remember it. Hawk looked at Peter, who was speaking with certainty, and frowned. You sure? It can't be wrong. Peter nodded, then thought about it again. That lizard monster gives me the feeling that it seems to have come into contact with you, so it has your scent left on it, just like Gwen also has your scent left on it. But Gwen's scent is also much stronger than that lizard monster. After hearing this description, Hawk's expression suddenly became clear. He thought Peter was going to say something. That's how it is. Hawk chuckled and looked at Peter. Then I think I know who he is. Peter's eyes lit up. Who? Curtis Connors, from the Osborne Bioindustrial Regeneration Laboratory. Gwen went there yesterday, and Dr. Connors is also looking for regeneration technology through studying lizards. If Peter said that Dr. Lizard had left his information, he would still be confused. But when Peter compared her to Gwen, he understood. If his aura is 1, then the aura that Gwen, who is with him, has is 0.5. The day before yesterday morning, Gwen went to Osborne Bioindustry again and had contact with Dr. Connors. So theoretically, this is probably where the faint scent Peter smelled from Dr. Connors came from. Peter opened his mouth in surprise when Hawk revealed the true identity of the lizard monster. It's him. You know him too. Yeah, I have the impression that I have met my father. Okay. After Hawk figured out what was going on with Dr. Connors's residual aura, he was completely relieved. He yawned. Okay, it's too late. I need to go to bed. All right. Peter was about to continue discussing the dangers of the lizard monster with Hawk, but seeing Hawk's expression, he had no choice but to give up. Good night, Hawk. Good night, Spider-Girl. I'm not a spider spirit. You sure? Hawk, who was already halfway back, turned back, tilted his head, and looked at Peter with a half-smile. Come on, tell me loudly where your spider silk comes from. Peter opened his mouth, and his expression turned serious. Good night, Hawk. Good night, Peter. Hawk didn't tease Peter this time. Soon. Peter flew away on the swing. After returning home, Hawk ate his fried chicken legs, took a cold shower, and then went to bed. At the same time, under the ground of Queens, there are sewer pipes that are interconnected and can even become homes for countless homeless people when winter blizzards come. As a beast-like roar came from the depths, it gradually became lower and lower. Till the end, the roar disappeared. Instead, there was a human groan. It's a new week. Please keep reading. There will be more updates coming soon. End of this chapter. Chapter 48, Dr. Lizard tops the school hot list. Chapter 48, Dr. Lizard tops the school hot list. Unsurprisingly, the next day, while still on the school bus, the lizard monster that appeared on the Williamsburg Bridge yesterday has become the hot news of the day. None of them. Hunai Zai, did you watch the news this morning? See, it's a good thing I live in Queens, not Brooklyn or Manhattan, because we can't afford houses in either of those places. I think we should leave New York City after we graduate. What happened? Look, a few years ago, there was the Hulk and the Abomination. Last year there was the Science and Technology Expo, and this year even the aliens came. And now, this year isn't even over yet, and here comes this lizard monster. Hiss. That's right, what happened to New York City in recent years. Anyway, it hasn't been good since September 2001. By the way, am I the only one curious about how Spider-Man shoots his web? Sitting in the last row, leaning against the window, Hawk heard a weak voice coming from inside the school bus. He raised his eyebrows and subconsciously looked at Peter, who was sitting next to him. Look, I'm not the only one who's curious. Peter felt the teasing in Hawk's eyes and twitched his lips. I don't want to discuss this issue. Hawk shrugged, not caring at all. He readily changed the subject and glanced at the last row where only he and Peter were sitting. What about Harry? He didn't take the school bus with you today. He's going to be late. He went to Osborne Bioindustries in the morning. He said Osborne was invaded last night. Peter said, scanning the interior of the car, and then whispered, I asked a few more questions, and it turns out the theft was from Dr. Curtis Connors's laboratory. It said that all the equipment was taken away by the Lizardmen. Hawk nodded. It is said that the good neighbor of the New Yorker was not present. New Yorker's good neighbors are sleeping. Peter's mouth twitched. He was now extremely glad that he had gotten himself a spider suit to cover his face. Have a look. The only person who knew his true identity, and who was as taciturn as him in the school, teased him like this. What if this happened to someone else? The most important point is that he is a chivalrous man, which is true. Uncle Ben would be very pleased to see him now. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. But no matter how powerful you are, you still need to sleep. Even real spiders need to rest every day. Besides, he's not a real spider, so he can't be attacking everywhere 24 hours a day. Peter thought about it, thinking about the topic that was not finished last night, and lowered his voice. What do you think Dr. Connors wants to do by doing this? I don't know, I don't care, I don't care. Hawk shook his head and pressed the key 3 times. Peter looked at Hawk, who had returned to his usual frugal nature after saying this, and was looking at the scenery outside the window. He opened his mouth, but said nothing else. He hadn't considered inviting Hawk to join him as a vigilante. After all, what you like may not be liked by others, so don't force others to like it. Peter understood this point. Arrived at school. The popularity of the lizard monster not only did not abate, but it seemed to be getting more and more intense after students from all grades gathered together. Various rumors. All kinds of gossip. They are flying all over the sky among the adolescent students who are 15, 16, or 17 years old and have too much hormone to control. Around noon, Hawk, who had ordered a hamburger and a Coke as usual, was engrossed in his meal when Gwen, who had finished class later than him, sat down opposite him with her tray. I just received news that I don't need to go to Osborne Bioindustries recently. Dr. Connors' laboratory was robbed by Lizardmen, and Dr. Connors is missing. Hawk looked up, thought for a moment, then looked at Gwen and lowered his voice. Either the lizard man or Dr. Connors stole it. He had originally planned to tell Gwen about this when he saw her at school in the morning. But in the morning, Gossip Girl Mary was also next to Gwen. Hawk thought about it and didn't say anything at that time. But it's the same now. It won't delay anything. After hearing Hawk's words, Gwen was stunned at first. Then her expression instantly turned into shock, and her chest rose and fell at a speed visible to the naked eye. But soon, she seemed to remember that this was a restaurant, and it was not appropriate to make loud noises. But she stared with wide eyes at Hawk, who continued to eat his hamburger after saying this. What Dr. Connors is, real. There's a 99% chance. Spider-Man said the lizard man has my scent, though it's very weak. Spider-Man. Hawk nodded naturally. Gwen was stunned again. If her eyes weren't already wide open, she felt they could have opened them even wider. You know Spider-Man. Correct. Who is he? Cannot say. Hawk shook his head and chose not to tell Gwen that Peter was a spider spirit. Tell Gwen the identity of Dr. Lizard, because there is a chance that Dr. Lizard will hurt Gwen. This is not good. But Peter was different, especially since his version of Peter is the first-generation Spider-Man, who is a good neighbor to New Yorkers who, even when possessed by venom, only wants to buy a discounted suit, ask the newspaper boss for a raise, and make the eyes of those he dislikes dusty. And Peter didn't brag about his strength everywhere. Naturally, he would not tell others that Peter was the spider spirit. Hawk said this, then smiled at Gwen's big, unblinking eyes. Even if you look at me like that, I won't tell you. Gwen then averted her gaze. If you don't want to tell me, then don't tell me. I'll find it myself. Again. No one knows Hawk better than her. Hawk's network of relationships is very simple. Basically, she knows everyone Hawk knows. And so, if Hawk knew Spider-Man, then there was a high probability that he also knew Spider-Man. She is very confident. Gwen lowered her voice as she quickly picked out the people that both she and Hawk knew. No, how did Dr. Connors become the lizard man from yesterday? Do not know. Hawk shook his head. I guess only God knows what happened. I spoke to Dr. Connors on the phone that time, and he said his regeneration potion was successful on a mouse with a broken tail. That's what Gwen asked him, and he thought about it for a moment. If it were Peter, he would be too lazy to think about it. Even if Dr. Lizard pierced New York City, it would not be his turn, because there would be people who would be more anxious than him. Hawk thought to himself, then saw Gwen's eyes widen again. End of this chapter, Chapter 49, Hawk and #039, S Blood Analysis Report. Chapter 49, Hawk's Blood Analysis Report. What did you just say? I don't know. No, what experiment did you just say the doctor used to succeed? A little white mouse with a broken tail. Didn't I tell you last time? Hawk frowned, looked at Gwen, who seemed a little shocked, and asked curiously, "What's wrong?" Gwen said nothing. She frowned. The experiment was successful. White mouse with a broken tail. For some reason, Gwen's mind suddenly emerged. 2 months ago, the little white mouse escaped from prison after the laboratory accident and licked Hawk's blood. If she remembered correctly, it seems that the little white mouse's tail is broken. Hiss. Gwen subconsciously took a breath, then looked at Hawk, then took out her cell phone from her pocket, found one of the numbers, and dialed it. Hawk, who was sitting opposite, raised his eyebrows when he saw Gwen's actions. Soon, Gwen's phone rang. "Hey, Elsa." "Gwen, are you here to ask what happened?" "Sorry, the company made us sign a confidentiality agreement." "No, Elsa. I wanted to ask if the doctor's experiment was successful on the mouse with a broken tail." Yeah." Elsa, a female researcher who had just signed a confidentiality agreement with the company in the Osborne bioindustry building, nodded. "But we can't say it was a success because it only happened once. We've tried to replicate it since then, but we've failed." Gwen heard this and quickly asked, "Did the guinea pig that escaped from prison succeed?" "Yes, that's the one." "Really?" Gwen said to herself, then calmly spoke a few more words to Elsa on the other end of the phone before hanging up. Hawk looked at Gwen after she hung up the phone and asked curiously, "Is there anything different about the little white mouse that escaped from prison?" Gwen put her phone away and glanced at Hawk. She thought about it. "Do you remember that lab accident?" "Yes, remember. Your hand was injured and bleeding, right?" "No." Hawk shook his head decisively. Gwen said nothing, just looked at Hawk quietly. Hawk met Gwen's gaze and thought for a moment, "Okay, just pretend I was injured at the time. Continue." Gwen stared at Hawk. "Those few drops of blood you left on the ground were licked away by the tail-broken rat." Hawk frowned slightly as he looked at Gwen. Gwen was also looking at Hawk. Eyes facing each other. Hawk averted his gaze and took a deep breath. "Do you doubt that the mouse that successfully cut its tail was the same mouse you saw?" Gwen shrugged. "That's the only variable. Otherwise, why did the doctor conduct so many animal experiments, but only that little mouse was successful?" Although she didn't understand what the connection was. But Gwen's mind, once again, recalled the waterfall deep in the forests of Maryland, which looked like an angry dragon raising its head and rolling back the sky. And there was Hawk, who was standing under the reverse Tianhu waterfall and was the cause of all this. Hawk didn't say anything, but silently put the large bucket of Coke in his hand aside, then crossed his hands on the table, leaned forward slightly and looked at Gwen. He thought about what Peter said last night on the rooftop of the apartment. Dr. Lizard carried his scent. Hawk had assumed last night that the scent was lingering from Gwen's encounter with Dr. Connors the day before. But that doesn't seem to be the case now. There was an accident in the laboratory, and he shed a few drops of blood. The escaped mouse with a broken tail sucked the few drops of blood he left, and then became the only surviving mouse in the experiment in which all other mice died. Dr. Connors extracted new serum from the surviving mouse and synthesized a regenerative agent. After that, Dr. Connors becomes Dr. Lizard. Hawk frowned, looked at Gwen, who was staring at him quietly, opened his mouth, and then shook his head with a sense of absurdity. "My blood shouldn't be that exaggerated. There's a way to find out." "What?" "There's a blood analyzer in the Stark building on campus. It can produce results in as little as half an hour." The Stark building refers to the school's building number 3, an experimental building donated by Howard Stark. Most of the equipment inside was donated by Stark Industries. Of course, this also includes the fully automatic rapid blood test analyzer with the Stark logo, which looks to be worth at least hundreds of thousands of dollars, but is actually worth more than $1 million US. Hawk put his finger in his mouth and sucked it. When he took it out, the wound had healed. Gwen had already started the machine by now. The machine has also started to operate. While waiting for the results, Gwen turned her head and looked at Hawk curiously. "Have you mutated like Dr. Bruce Banner?" She had actually always wanted to ask. But there was never an opportunity. Hawk looked at Gwen's curious gaze, laughed uncontrollably, and shook his head. I can assure you, I am 100% human, pure. He just awakened his microcosm. Only, he would never admit any mutation. Only poor people rely on mutation. Although he was also very poor, he relied on himself. As I said before, he could have the strength he has today thanks to his unremitting self-improvement and daily efforts. 1,000 days of hard work, the sweat shed from 10,000 punches every day, finally watered the flowers he deserved. Hawk thought to himself, paused, looked at Gwen, thought for a moment, and added, Anyway, I'm definitely not a mutant like the Spider Ghost. Also, don't put me together with Bruce Banner. He doesn't deserve it. Gwen's heart moved, and she caught the key point in Hawk's words. Her eyes lit up. Spider spirit, is it Spider-Man? Is he also a mutant? Hawk blinked, then made a zippering motion around his mouth as Gwen watched. I won't reveal his identity anyway, Gwen. Forget it, I can find it myself. Gwen rolled her eyes. At this time, drop, while the two were talking in the laboratory, the fully automatic rapid blood test analyzer, which had been working for half an hour, finally issued a prompt sound indicating the end. Gwen hurried over and took out the analysis report spit out by the machine. Hawk also came over. Into the eye. Red blood cell count, white blood cell count, platelet count. The values are off the charts. Hawk blinked. This was within his expectations, as the Saint Seiya cultivated himself. After glancing at the test report, Gwen took a deep breath and looked at Hawk. Hawk, do you know what the outside world would think if they knew about your blood analysis? Hawk smiled. He glanced at Gwen. Temperature. It won't be so easy for others to collect my blood. End of this chapter. Chapter 50, Dr. Connors doesn't intend to be a human being. Chapter 50, Dr. Connors doesn't intend to be a human being. Why did Hawk work so hard to become stronger? Isn't it just to take control of your own destiny? Oh. Now someone comes and wants to get his blood. Wanna eat fart. It was just Gwen just now. If it were anyone else, Hawk guaranteed that the moment that guy's blood collection needle fell, his head would be blown to pieces by Hawk. But Gwen ignored Hawk's witticism and looked back at Hawk's blood analysis report that had just come out in her hand. Others may not understand it, but she can. But precisely because she understood it, Gwen took a deep breath. Hawk's blood data is almost off the charts. The white blood cell count alone is the maximum value that the device can display, and the actual data may be even higher. What does the white blood cell count indicate? It shows that Hawk's immune system is extremely powerful and efficient. With such a powerful immune system, it can almost instantly identify and eliminate any foreign organisms, such as viruses, bacteria, and parasites. Even this shows Hawk's amazing resilience. Gwen thought again of the day of the laboratory accident. It was only a moment. She clearly saw Hawk bleeding, but his hand recovered in the blink of an eye. There are other data. In a word, if Gwen hadn't personally drawn blood from Hawk's finger and had only looked at this piece of data, she would definitely think that the data was fake. Because this is not data that a human should have. Captain America's blood test report, I saw it online. Hawk, your data is even more exaggerated than Captain America's. You haven't been injected with the super soldier serum like Captain America, have you? Gwen couldn't help but look at Hawk. After ruling out the option of mutation, the only option left was to inject the super soldier serum. But a pity. Hawk shrugged. Not at all. Okay. Seeing this, Gwen decisively stopped the topic and quickly tore the test report in her hand to shreds. She also cleaned the machine inside and out, rinsed the test tubes under the tap 3 times, and finally threw the wet and soft shredded paper into the trash can next to her. Completely eliminate any possibility of this test report and blood sample being accidentally discovered by other people. Hawk couldn't help but laugh as he watched Gwen finish all this. Is there any need to be so nervous when? Is necessary. Gwen said to Hawk with a serious expression, "I have no doubt that if your data is exposed, you will end up on the dissection table." Hawk raised his eyebrows and said, "That depends on whether they can catch me. They can try to see if they can move there." Because Hawk didn't mind, letting them go from trying to dying. Anyway, he has already started a killing spree. Again, killing is no longer a choice for him. It is just a matter of how many to kill. But Gwen's expression did not ease because of Hawk's words. Instead, she looked at Hawk with a very serious expression. "Hawk, never let anyone know your blood data." "All right." Hawk looked at Gwen with a serious face, thought for a moment, and nodded. The serious expression on Gwen's face finally eased a little, and she changed the subject as she and Hawk walked out of the laboratory. "Then what happens next?" "What?" "Dr. Connors." "It's none of our business," Hawk shrugged. "His transformation into a lizard monster wasn't caused by us. Dr. Connors might already be in Mexico by now." Gwen thought about it and nodded. "Possible. Let's not talk about him anymore. What classes do you have this afternoon?" "French, what about you?" "Geography." The two of them left Stark number 3 laboratory building while discussing their respective afternoon class schedules. Just like that, 3 days passed in a flash. During these 3 days, the hotspot caused by the lizard monster gradually subsided. After all, since the lizard monster appeared on the Williamsburg Bridge that day, it has not appeared again in the past 3 days. Everyone thought that the lizard monster had either been secretly captured by the military or had escaped New York City. Peter, a good neighbor from New York, thinks so too. But, in fact, Dr. Lizard has never left. Even at this moment, he is in an underground pipe 5 blocks away from Midtown High School. In the sewers of New York City, there is a platform every certain distance. Dr. Lizard's temporary base was located on this platform. But at this moment, Dr. Lizard has returned to his appearance as Dr. Connors. But after experiencing being a giant lizard man with immense strength and all-around good limbs, but at most an ugly appearance, how could one be willing to return to being a powerless or even disabled person after the dose wore off? Perhaps Dr. Connors' original intention in injecting the regenerative potion was to prevent the board of directors from using those already pitiful disabled soldiers for experiments. But now Dr. Connors has awakened. There's nothing wrong with being a human, but being a lizardman makes you stronger, more powerful, and have a wider range of possibilities than ordinary people. So Dr. Connors decided one thing. He is no longer a human being. He will permanently become a lizard man. In order to achieve this goal, we must first figure out why the only successful mouse was successful. So during these 3 days, he has been watching the video of his laboratory here. At last, as the hypnotic mechanical sound produced by the surge of electric current occasionally passed through his ears, Dr. Connors, who was sweating and covered in dirt, suddenly had his eyes brightened as he looked at the frozen image on the screen in front of him. Into the eye. It was truly a scene of a little white mouse, with a broken tail licking the blood on the ground. Dr. Connors quickly rewound the video, and soon the picture finally froze at the moment when Hawk withdrew his hand from Gwen's eyes. "Hawk, it's him." After seeing this scene, Dr. Connors was shocked, and his body began to tremble involuntarily. He was trembling with joy. Because he had a good relationship with Hawk in the past, Dr. Connors felt that if he called Hawk, Hawk would definitely give him some blood for research. He thought so and did it. But just as Dr. Connors was about to take out his phone, suddenly, a voice that seemed to be from his inner heart rang in his heart and in his ears. "No, he won't give it to you. How could he, who possesses such powerful blood, give you his own blood?" Dr. Connors' eyes became dazed as he listened to the whispers that seemed to echo in his heart and in his ears. "Yeah, he won't give it to me. How could he possibly give it to me? But what should I do?" "Gwen. Capture Gwen, she's Hawk's girlfriend. Capture Gwen and force him to give you his blood." "You're right, capture Gwen and force her." Dr. Connors' eyes were vacant, and he muttered to himself as he grabbed the 3 remaining regeneration potions beside him. Updates are being continuously released. Please read and collect. End of this chapter. Chapter 51, Dr. Lizard Strikes Again. Chapter 51, Dr. Lizard Strikes Again, it's Peter. In physics class, Hawk glanced at the words on the small piece of paper pushed in front of him, raised his eyebrows, and glanced at Gwen, who was sitting next to him. Gwen gestured with her eyes to the small piece of paper in front of Hawk. Hawk smiled and returned the note to Gwen without comment. He made no statement. It was one thing for Gwen to guess it herself, but it was another for him to nod. Again, the spider spirit didn't betray herself, so he naturally wouldn't betray Peter either. Soon, after class, Gwen walked towards the locker hallway with Hawk, holding her books, wondering if Spider-Man was Peter. She thought it must be Peter. After all, Hawk's network of relationships is too simple, and considering that Peter was a member of a disadvantaged group in school before, he suddenly emerged. Most of the students thought it might be, because Peter was practicing boxing behind Hawk. This is also the reason for the rumor that Peter may be Hawk's only friend. Others may not understand this, but Gwen does. But it was precisely because Gwen knew very well that Peter did not become stronger by training with Hawk that she hesitated to be sure. Because some are too simple. It's like a poor student and a top student doing exercises at the same time. When faced with the same question, a poor student would say, "Wow, I know the answer to this question," and choose A, then fill in the answer without thinking. But the top students may fall into deep thought when looking at the answer that is almost written on the surface. This question, is there any trap? That's what Gwen is like. She was probably sure that Spider-Man was Peter, but as to whether it was true or not, she had not seen it with her own eyes, so she dared not make a conclusion. After a while, Hawk opened his locker, put his physics book in, and then took out his shoulder bag. "I'm going to Mrs. Snow's office." "It is good." Gwen had already retrieved her backpack from her locker and nodded. "I'll meet you in the library then." Hawk hummed, carrying his shoulder bag and walking towards the office of Counselor Mrs. Snow. Tomorrow and the day after tomorrow are the weekends. But the 10th is Monday. If he wants to take a leave on that day, he can only ask for it in advance today. Otherwise, if he waits until next Monday to ask for leave, it would be the same as acting first and asking for leave later. Gwen walked towards the library. Tomorrow is the weekend and also the day of the 12th grade opening dance. She needs to confirm all the details with the dance organizing committee before school ends today. After all, she wasn't the type to attend a dance. However, Gwen is the type of person who does not participate in the dance because the dance is not as important as studying. But because she is a grade assistant, she still needs to be responsible for the dance even if she does not participate. But now she is with Hawk, and although she didn't say it, she still wants to attend the graduation dance with Hawk if possible. I just don't know if Hawk will agree. Should maybe will, Gwen thought a little uncertainly. Just when Hawk and Gwen temporarily split up in the lounge corridor, one heading towards the office building and the other heading towards the library. Under the ground, in the filthy, smelly, sewage-filled sewer pipe, accompanied by the increasingly clear sound of a lizard spitting out its tongue coming from a distance, a huge lizard monster, like a strong swimmer, was riding the waves in the sewage pipe. Then, with a splash, it jumped out of the sewage and landed at the intersection of the underground pipes. Midtown High School. Gwen Stacy. Catch her and hold Hawk hostage. At this moment, the lizard doctor, who seemed to have completely transformed into a lizardman, rolled his compound eyes and flicked his scarlet tongue. The words that seemed to be whispered by the devil were like a brand, firmly imprinted in his mind. Soon, Dr. Lizard, standing at the intersection of the underground pipes, seemed to smell something. Next second, following a roar, Dr. Lizard rushed into an underground pipe again like a streak of light. He landed on all fours and, like a real reptile, quickly followed the current sewer pipe towards the student toilet of Midtown High School. A 9th grade student who just started school this year was squatting on the toilet playing with his mobile phone. Suddenly, a 9th grade student who had developed many spots on his face due to puberty felt something was wrong. The ground seemed to be shaking. And an unknown cool air was blowing from below, hitting his buttocks. The 9th grade students were a little confused. What's the situation? Earthquake. Boom. Just when the 9th grade student was still wondering whether an earthquake was coming, a powerful impact force came from below and caught him off guard and threw him away along with the toilet. A thud. The student who was knocked out of the cubicle, along with the toilet, and fell to the ground, was dumbfounded. Several other students who were in the restroom were stunned when they saw their classmates being fired out of the cubicle like a cannon. But they soon reacted. Into the eye. Without the protection of the cubicle door, the ground was tearing apart, and then a green claw grabbed the tiles on the ground, splashing a spark. Next second, hiss, after Dr. Lizard crawled out from under the toilet floor and stood firm. He opened his arms and roared as if announcing his arrival. Bah. Okay. Peter, who had just finished his chemistry class and returned to the lounge corridor, was about to take out his backpack when his eyes suddenly fell on his arms, where the hairs on his arms stood up one by one. Before he could react, several screams instantly broke the original leisure atmosphere in the rest corridor. What? God, the Lizardman. Run. Woo-woo, Mom. I don't want to go to school anymore. The bathroom door was suddenly pushed open, and then the students who were in the bathroom just now ran towards Peter with terrified expressions, while shouting to warn other students. Behind them was a classmate who was so scared that his pants were pulled up. He also didn't seem to notice that his pants were not on properly. It is clear. He was so scared that he probably didn't dare to go to the toilet alone for a long time afterwards. That was when the other students' eyes fell on these students who ran out of the bathroom. There was a loud bang. The bathroom wall shattered. Dr. Lizard's figure instantly appeared in the sight of the other students. Thank you so much. Lizardman. End of this chapter. Chapter 52, Spider Spirit vs. Lizardman. Chapter 52, Spider Spirit vs. Lizardman. After a few days, the Lizardman, who had already lost his popularity among the students, reappeared. Duke Joe loved dragons. Everything is the same. When most students see the Lizardman on TV, they will talk about various things related to the Lizardman with great relish. But when the Lizardman really appears in front of them, their reactions are surprisingly consistent. Scream. Get away. In an instant, the tranquility of the rest corridor was completely broken. But the office building, which is some distance away from the rest corridor, still looks peaceful and tranquil at this moment. The staff here have not yet noticed the changes outside, especially in Mrs. Snow's office. Mrs. Snow was not surprised by Hawk's leave of absence, because Hawk would take leave on September 10th every year. This time, too, Hawk, who had already asked for leave and was about to leave, was stopped by Mrs. Snow. Hawk, who was almost at the door, turned and looked at Mrs. Snow again. Mrs. Snow smiled. I heard you're with Gwen. Great, you finally followed your heart. Mrs. Snow sounded somewhat amused. Gwen could see that Hawk seemed a little resistant to her before this, not to mention Mrs. Snow, who had seen more teenagers than Hawk had. But Mrs. Snow saw things more clearly than Gwen. After all, she knew Gwen as well as Hawk. Let's say that. If she didn't understand, she wouldn't have gone to Gwen when she couldn't find Hawk. And so, Mrs. Snow's tone was somewhat lamenting. I thought you wouldn't break through the window paper before graduation, but I'm curious. Can you tell me who made it this far first? Hawk also suddenly became gossipy, but he was more concerned about Mrs. Snow. After thinking for a moment, he looked at Mrs. Snow. Gwen, it's just like I guessed, Hawk. I know there's an old saying in the East Country. I originally wanted to give it to you when you graduated. Mrs. Snow nodded, then smiled at Hawk. It's not a shame to be born in a humble family. A husband should be able to bend and stretch. I originally thought that if you haven't changed by the time we graduate, I would give you this message, but now it seems that it is no longer necessary. As she had said before, she knew Gwen, and she knew Hawk. Hawk listened to the old saying, Mrs. Snow gave him and said, "Thank you." Mrs. Snow then said, "Can I give you another piece of advice, Hawk?" Hawk nodded, of course. He didn't know whether other students' high school counselors were competent, but his counselor, Mrs. Snow, was very competent, and her concern for him was genuine, so he would listen carefully to the advice given by Mrs. Snow. Mrs. Snow smiled. "Prom. Okay." Hawk raised an eyebrow and looked at Mrs. Snow. Mrs. Snow smiled and said, "I know you don't like attending this kind of dance, but graduation dance is different. If you can, don't miss it. Of course, bring your female partner. That way, even in the future, when you look back on your high school life, at least it won't be a blank, right? Going to prom with Gwen Seam. Looks pretty good." As Hawk heard Mrs. Snow's words, the scene of the graduation ball appeared in his mind, and his heart couldn't help but move. Handsome men and beautiful women. Singing and dancing, luxury cars and champagne. Hawk quickly returned to reality, put away his distracting thoughts, and looked at Mrs. Snow with a sincere smile. "Okay, Mrs. Snow, I will seriously consider this suggestion." Mrs. Snow smiled with satisfaction after receiving Hawk's answer. Hawk then tried to leave. But that's it. Bang, the door was opened from the outside, and a staff member poked his head in and shouted to Mrs. Snow, "Something happened, hurry up." Mrs. Snow was slightly taken aback. Hawk raised his eyebrows. 1 minute later, Hawk walked out of the office building and fell silent as he watched the students running frantically out of several emergency exits of the teaching building in the distance. How? Was there also a campus shooting at a midtown university? Run. The Lizardmen are coming, run away. Classmates, run here. Lizardman, Hawk caught the words of the fastest runner and activated his sharp 5 senses, which were usually closed. There's no way around it. If he doesn't shut down his 5 senses normally, his sharp senses will drive him crazy. The moment he reopened his 5 keen senses, he instantly captured the screams, roars, fighting sounds, and the sound of spider silk being spit out in the teaching building. Hiss Dr. Lizard. Bah. Boom. Taking advantage of the chaos, Peter ran into the bathroom. During the battle with Dr. Lizard, the spider spirit, who had completed her disguise, was grabbed by Dr. Lizard's claw and thrown out. At the same time, Dr. Lizard's claw also hooked off the backpack on Peter's back. Peter. Parker. Dr. Lizard's eyes fell on the mark on the backpack in his hand. Then, as if he had thought of something, he looked at Peter, who had fallen to the ground and stood up again after hitting the wall. Peter Parker without a father or a mother. Peter said nothing and chose to attack again. But Dr. Lizard's tail was stuck on the locker in the rest corridor, and he swung it directly towards Peter, who was rushing towards him. With another bang, Peter was knocked out. Boom, boom, boom. Peter, who was hit by the locker, fell to the ground and rolled on the ground instantly. After smashing through the door, he rolled out of the building and onto the grass outside. With a violent roar, Dr. Lizard's huge body directly blew away the door and appeared on the lawn. Next second, just when Dr. Lizard had just landed and had not yet stood firmly, Peter had already supported himself on the grass with his hands, then gathered his strength and kicked out suddenly, hitting Dr. Lizard's waist like a cannonball, once again knocking Dr. Lizard into the teaching building. The sounds of rapid fighting and shattering walls were heard again in the teaching building. Hawk had already run to the library by now. Although he didn't quite understand why Dr. Lizard still appeared in Midtown High School, it was none of his business. Anyway, the spider spirit is here, and Dr. Lizard will have the spider spirit to take care of him. After Hawk ran into the library, the first thing he saw was Gwen running down from the 2nd floor in a panic following the crowd. Gwen. Hawk. Gwen, who was coming down from the 2nd floor and following the crowd downstairs, successfully met Hawk on the stairs and asked hurriedly, "What's going on?" Hawk was about to speak. Boom, he turned his head and looked up. Without caring about Peter pulling the spider silk tissue behind him, Dr. Lizard dragged Peter and broke the 2nd floor window, then opened his claws and pounced on himself and Gwen, who were standing on the stairs. End of this chapter, Chapter 53, the lizardman who showed his head was killed in seconds. Chapter 53, the lizardman who showed his head was killed in seconds. The ferocious Dr. Lizard. The spider spirit hanging behind him. And also, Gwen was stunned. Hawk didn't have time to think about it. The moment he grabbed Gwen, he seemed to think of something. He pulled her back hard, hugged Gwen in his arms, turned around on the spot, exposing his back to Dr. Lizard's eyes. Bang, Doctor. Lizard's sharp claws hit Hawk's back like a falling rock and knocked Hawk directly down the stairs. Hawk turned again in the air, and his back hit the bookshelf below. The bookshelf was broken. All this happened in a flash. When the others reacted and saw this scene, they screamed and ran out of the library. Hawk. Dr. Lizard, like a real monster, stepped on the stairs, his throat surging, looking at Hawk who stood up below. Blood, give it to me. Okay. Coming towards me. Hawk, who felt nothing at all from the blow from Dr. Lizard, except for his clothes being a little messy and dusty, muttered to himself as he listened to Dr. Lizard's words. He then subconsciously looked at Gwen, who had also recovered from her shock, and asked, "Are you okay?" It's just that he was a little curious. If Dr. Lizard was coming for him, then why did Dr. Lizard's attack just now seem to be aimed at Gwen? And this is no illusion. This was intuition. If Dr. Lizard had been coming towards him just now, let alone hitting him, even if Dr. Lizard could just get close to him, all his efforts of 2.5 years would have been in vain. Hawk was just thinking of pulling Gwen away at supersonic speed. But just as he was about to do it, a series of consequences of doing so suddenly flashed through his mind. Such as, Gwen would not be able to withstand the sudden acceleration force, causing her entire body to be crushed as if by an invisible big hand. Another example, Gwen's body would be torn apart due to the fatal air resistance. After all, he can move at supersonic speeds, and his body can handle it, but Gwen can't. So she changed her mind at that moment and chose to withstand Dr. Lizard's attack. So this has nothing to do with him not wanting to be exposed in front of his classmates. He is not afraid of being exposed, nor does he care about being exposed. As for the idea of pretending to be a pig and eating the tiger, it does not exist. Even when he robbed Quantico, he only wore a hood and a medical mask at most, and he didn't even bring gloves. As long as Quantico conducted a thorough investigation, it would be possible to find him. After all, he didn't do anything to cover up when he scouted the location during the day, so he could just check it casually and make a dynamic comparison to make it match. In a word, he was not afraid of being exposed to the military, let alone here. Hawk just didn't want Gwen to get hurt. Gwen, who had recovered from his ferocious expression at this moment, subconsciously shook his head and said it was okay. Then his eyes suddenly shrank. Careful. Boom. Hawk threw a punch, and the wind from his fist hit the desk that Dr. Lizard swung with his tail, and the desk instantly shattered into pieces in the air. You go out first. Be careful, his strength is a bit exaggerated. At this moment, Peter, who was really like a real spider clinging to the wall, gave a warning. To be precise, it's exaggerated to a certain extent. If Dr. Lizard's power was 1 when he was on the Williamsburg Bridge, then his power is now 3. Fortunately, he is a spider spirit, and his healing speed is also exaggerated. But Peter knew that Hawk was very strong, but he had never seen Hawk take action, so when he realized that Hawk was about to go into battle, he still spoke out to remind him. Of course. Peter's voice at this moment is somewhat different from his real voice. Compared with his real voice, Peter's voice at this moment is a little low. However, this also made Gwen subconsciously look at it, but then nodded at Hawk. Then be careful. It is good. Hawk smiled. Gwen then turned around, trying to find some safety. But just as Gwen turned around and was about to escape, Dr. Lizard's pupils contracted, and then he kicked his legs, flew into the air, and pounced on Gwen again. Thank you so much. You wanna die. The first sentence was said by Peter. After seeing this scene, Peter stuck his feet to the wall and stretched out his hands at the same time. 2 spider silks shot out instantly, and with 2 snaps, they grabbed Dr. Lizard, who was already flying in the air, causing Dr. Lizard, who was rushing towards Gwen, to pause in the air for a moment. The last sentence was said by Hawk. After Hawk saw that Dr. Lizard wanted to kill Gwen in front of him, his voice became cold and stern. Next second, bang, with a sonic boom, Hawk disappeared from his original position. In the blink of an eye, he was in the air and stood in front of Dr. Lizard. He lightly punched Dr. Lizard in the chest. Click! Dr. Lizard's chest collapsed, and in the blink of an eye, the mutated heart inside was exposed. Then, his body flew backwards with a roar like a kite with a broken string. Peter also flew backwards. His 2 spider silks were still attached to Dr. Lizard's back, so when Dr. Lizard was knocked away by Hawk's punch, he screamed and flew backwards under this force. Fortunately, Peter reacted in time, cut the 2 spider silk threads, did a somersault in the air, and then his limbs adhered to the library ceiling, dissipating the force. But Dr. Lizard was not so lucky. Boom, 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 Dr. Lizard flew backwards and smashed through a row of bookshelves in the library on the 2nd floor. Finally, with the sound of bookshelves collapsing, his back hit the wall on the 2nd floor. The wall behind him cracked instantly and prevented Dr. Lizard from taking another step back. And it all happened in the blink of an eye. After Hawk blasted Dr. Lizard away, he appeared beside Gwen in the blink of an eye. "Are you okay, Gwen?" Gwen shook her head blankly. Her mind was still lingering on the image of Dr. Lizard flying towards her. Dr. Connors wants to kill himself. Why, there is no reason for this. Peter had already fallen from the ceiling to the 2nd floor, where a row of bookshelves were destroyed, and even the floor was cracked by Dr. Lizard's tail. Then he saw the miserable state of Dr. Lizard. Into the eye. Dr. Lizard's chest collapsed completely, and the exposed mutant heart was filled with fragments. The mutant heart was beating slowly, but the speed was getting slower and slower, and the green color on Dr. Lizard's body was gradually fading. One strike, Dr. Lizard is dying. Continuously updating, please collect and read. End of this chapter, Chapter 54, Dr. Lizard Bewitched by the Devil. Chapter 54, Dr. Lizard Bewitched by the Devil when Hawk and Gwen came to the 2nd floor. Dr. Lizard has disappeared, replaced by Dr. Connors, who has returned to human form, but the injury on his chest is still there and is irreversible. Blood was oozing from the corner of Dr. Connors' mouth, but he forced a smile as he looked at Hawk walking towards him. "Thank you." Hawk said nothing, but looked at Dr. Connors and raised an eyebrow. Gwen, who was standing by, asked in confusion, "Doctor, why are you trying to kill me?" She couldn't understand. If Dr. Connors is looking for Spider-Man, because of the Williamsburg Bridge incident. If Dr. Connors wanted blood, he should have gone to Hawk. But why stare at her? Leaning against the wall, Dr. Connors, who had no strength left, listened to Gwen's question and chuckled. But as his chest rose and fell, a hint of blood red appeared on Dr. Connors' pale face. With a poo sound, he spat out a mouthful of blood, and his breath became extremely weak. Dr. Connors, who was already on his deathbed and about to close his eyes forever, uttered the last words of his life. "I do not know either. Possible. I have been bewitched by the devil. Right. I can't bear it." Boom. As Dr. Connors finished these words reluctantly, he closed his eyes completely, and his one-armed left hand fell to the floor with a crisp thud. Dr. Connors died. Seeing this, Hawk withdrew his gaze from Dr. Connors' body and said to the spider spirit standing beside him, "Why don't you leave?" Peter, who was still in shock that Dr. Connors was taken away with just one punch, came to his senses and looked at Hawk. "How about you?" "The man was killed by the spider spirit. What does it have to do with me, Hawk?" "I'm not a spider spirit." "Then you spider silk." "I go first." Without any nonsense, Peter turned around, shot out a spider silk, turned in the air, poked the glass window on the ceiling with his toes, and went out through the window and disappeared from Hawk and Gwen's sight. At this time, Gwen also reacted, as if she thought of something, exclaimed, and then pulled Hawk towards the monitoring room in the library downstairs. No surveillance. Don't worry, it wasn't captured. What? The place where I attacked just now was a blind spot. I could only see Dr. Lizard flying backwards, but I couldn't see who attacked him. Hawk explained with a smile as Gwen pulled him downstairs. This may be God's will. He really didn't care about being exposed or not. When he made his move, he didn't know that place was a blind spot. He only found out after he made his move. Then it's none of his business. Maybe, possibly, God felt that it was not time for him to be exposed. If there is a God. After half an hour, the New York Police Department carried out Dr. Connors, whose body was already dead and cold, from the library. Sergeant George Stacy of Manhattan's 19th Precinct also arrived at the scene. Gwen. George got out of the car, ran straight to Gwen and hugged Gwen. Thank God you are okay. Dad. After breaking free from George's embrace, Gwen glanced at Hawk, then took Hawk's right hand and said to George, Hawk protected me. George then looked at Hawk. Hawk still greeted politely. Mr. Stacy. Thank you. Unlike last time when he ignored Hawk, this time George nodded slightly and said thank you to Hawk. Hawk smiled and said, this is what I should do. George didn't say anything. He glanced at Gwen and Hawk, who were arm in arm in front of him, and then said to Gwen, call Helen. She's very worried after the news that Midtown High School was attacked by Lizardmen. Gwen then remembered that she had forgotten to call her mother. She exclaimed, then quickly took out her cell phone from her pocket and called her mother Helen. After Gwen ran aside to make a phone call, George stood beside Hawk, looking at Dr. Connors, who was put into a body bag not far away. So, Dr. Lizard is Dr. Connors, but why is he here at school? Hawk's heart moved, and he shook his head without any expression. I don't know. He was thinking about what Dr. Connors said before he died. Bewitched by the devil. Good guy. What kind of demon could have bewitched Dr. Connors to ignore Spider-Man, with whom he had a fight on the Williamsburg Bridge, and Hawk, whose blood seemed very important to him, and instead make the harmless Gwen his primary target? That doesn't make sense. Unless this demon isn't some serious demon. Hawk thought silently in his heart. Pity. Dr. Connors is dead, and I'm afraid we will never know the answer to this question. Soon. After reporting to her mother Helen that she was safe, Gwen walked over with ease and naturally took Hawk's arm. I've reported to my mother that I'm safe. George watched his daughter's natural movement out of the corner of his eye. The corners of his mouth twitched secretly, and then he prepared to leave. He had to leave, as he was afraid that he would lose control and shoot Hawk. Half an hour later, with the departure of Sheriff George Stacy of the Queens Precinct and the 19th Precinct of the New York Police Department, Midtown High School also announced that school would be dismissed early today. The students, who were still in shock from the Spider-Man versus Lizard fight, immediately came out of their shock after hearing this decision. After shouting that the school was wise, they ran towards the parking lot like wild horses. Hawk also shook his head, too lazy to think about why Dr. Connors did this. All are dead. It's useless to think about it anymore. Weekend. Because it was the weekend, Hawk stayed at home in his new apartment. He connected the computer that Sky sold him to the hotspot of the mobile phone that his girlfriend gave him and was surfing the internet. He took advantage of the weekend, when he had some time to rest, and planned to search online to see if he could sell the 5 swords hidden under his bed that he had collected from killing the Chitauri soldiers. It won't work if it doesn't sell. He had to find a way to make money, otherwise, even if he wanted to attend the graduation ball, he probably wouldn't have enough money to buy a dress. Although theoretically, he is no longer short of money. But after the Spider-Girl was Evelyn by Venom, her worst evil thought was to buy a discounted suit. Hawk felt that he was not as morally sound as the first-generation Spider-Spider, but at least he couldn't be much worse than the first-generation Spider-Spider. Just as he was searching online for sales channels, there was a snapping sound outside the window. Hawk looked up. The spider spirit, who was just thinking about it, was clinging to his window and looking inside from the emergency stairs outside. End of this chapter, Chapter 55, Favors must be repaid and hatred must be avenged. Chapter 55. Favors must be repaid and hatred must be avenged. Sticky pipe walls. Cold air. There was also a stench of rust, silt, and unknown fermented substances, which made Hawk block his sense of smell as he walked through it. He is not afraid of heat or cold, but he is afraid of stench. The cold and the heat are bearable, but the stench is unbearable, especially this kind of stench that penetrates every pore. Hawk looked at the spider spirit leading the way in front and was very curious. How did you find this place? I found it by following the lizard. Walking in front, perhaps because he also felt the stench was too strong, even with the spider mask on, Peter's voice was a little muffled. It's right in front, just around the corner. The day before yesterday, when he was fighting the lizard people at school, he found some lizards crawling out of the sewer pipes. So yesterday, Saturday, when Peter woke up and thought of this, he thought he had nothing to do anyway, so he just rushed into the sewer to look for it. As a result, after searching for a whole day, this morning he finally found Dr. Connor's temporary residence in the underground pipe maze. This is not. After he found it, he thought of Hawk and thought Hawk might also be interested. So he simply ran to Hawk and invited Hawk to join him for a weekend adventure in the underground maze of New York City. Soon, after Hawk followed Peter around a corner, he saw a platform not far away. There were wires on the platform that were connected from somewhere. The wires were stuck to the wall by an unknown liquid and connected to several light bulbs, illuminating the platform where 2 notebooks and some laboratory equipment were placed haphazardly. After Hawk stepped onto the platform, he looked around. Where is that video you mentioned? This. Peter walked to a laptop and tapped a few times on the keyboard, and then a video appeared on the screen. That blood is Hawk's. I should call Hawk. SHH, no, he definitely won't give it to me. Sheila. Right, Gwen. I can capture Gwen and force Hawk to give me his blood. Bale. Yes, that's it. Capture Gwen and have Hawk give me the blood. Kaj. In the video, Dr. Connors, whose clothes are filthy and whose hair hangs down on his head due to sweat, talks to himself as if he is possessed, with the screen flashing from time to time. At the end of the video, Dr. Connors, who seemed like a demon, grabbed the last 3 regeneration potions without hesitation and injected them into his body. Then, amidst bursts of broken roars, Dr. Lizard made a brilliant appearance. The video ends here. Hawk's expression became strange. So this is the reason why Dr. Lizard is targeting Gwen and killing him. His purpose is to capture Gwen and force him to hand over his blood. This. Hawk said he found it difficult to understand Dr. Connors' thought process. He thought about it, and there was only one reason to explain Dr. Connors' behavior. The lizard serum messed with his brain. Then will you give it? What? Hawk looked at Peter. Peter asked curiously, if Connors called you and asked for your blood, would you give it to him? Hawk frowned slightly at Peter's question. Would he give it to him? He thought about it for a moment, then nodded and looked at Peter. If not too much, yes. Why? Peter's eyes widened when he heard Hawk's answer. Although I don't know the details of your blood, it's likely the key to Connor's transformation into Dr. Lizard. If you knew the outcome, would you still give your blood away? Hawk looked at Peter and said calmly, he used my blood to become Dr. Lizard, that's his business, but he asked me for it, and whether I give it to him or not is my business. Peter frowned and shook his head. I don't understand. You and I are the same. Although you don't have parents, at least your parents existed, and you still have your Uncle Ben and Aunt May. I'm different. I'm an orphan and always have been, so you can become a superhero, but I can't, and I will never be able to. Why? I'm not as kind as you. Hawk smiled. Of course, I'm not that evil, but I've always followed a saying. A favor must be repaid, and a grudge must be avenged. When I was fired from Osborne Industries, Dr. Connors wrote me a letter of recommendation, even though it was none of Dr. Connors' business. Although this letter of recommendation is useless now, Dr. Connors didn't ask anything of me when he gave it to me, so. Hawk smiled again and looked at Peter. It's just a tube of blood. It's no loss to me. I'll give it to him. As for what he does with it, whether it's good or bad, that's his business. I just need to have a clear conscience." Peter listened to Hawk's explanation and nodded thoughtfully. Hawk seemed to have thought of something at this time and looked at Peter. "Why, you are also interested in my blood. If you want, I can also give you a tube." Peter came back to his senses and shook his head like a rattle. No, I don't want it." "Okay then." Hawk smiled and said nothing more. He just glanced at the platform again and shook his head. "That's why I said Dr. Connor's brain was damaged by the lizard serum. He could have asked me for it, but he had to do it like this. Let's go." Now that we know Dr. Connor's motive, even though it sounds a little unreasonable. But if you consider Dr. Connor's mental state in the video, it becomes understandable. Mentally ill people are much happier. Just as you never know what a cat is thinking, you can never peek into the thoughts of a psychopath. And so, Hawk was about to leave. He was thinking of taking advantage of today to get the 5 trophies and see if he could sell them for money, but he was forced to come here. Peter looked at Hawk, who was about to leave. What about this side? Hawk thought about it. Burn it. Burned. When a person dies, it's like a light goes out. Besides, if I keep these things, what if another lizard monster appears? But I don't care. It's up to you whether to burn them or not. It makes sense. Peter thought about it and nodded. Okay then, I'll leave this to you. I'm going back first. Good neighbor to New Yorkers. Hawk smiled slightly when he saw Peter nod, then turned around, waved his hand without looking back while speaking, and left. After seeing Hawk leave, Peter looked around and left as well. He needs to find tools to burn this place down. Just after Hawk and Peter left, a faint, flickering red dot on the platform gradually dimmed. End of this chapter, Chapter 56, If the IRS dares to rob, I will go crazy. Chapter 56, If the IRS dares to rob, I will go crazy. Hawk didn't take it to heart. After returning home, he continued to connect his computer to the hotspot of his mobile phone and began to browse relevant information on the internet. The Battle of New York took place in June, and 3 months have passed since then. Therefore, photos and videos of Zeta soldiers holding weapons have been circulated on the internet. You can even find the value of related weapons. For example, the underlying trading website that Hawk is currently browsing. He suddenly saw this while browsing the web. He originally thought it was just an ordinary trading website until he saw a video of a Western European girl being bid in real time with a clearly marked price. But Hawk just glanced at it and then looked at something else. First, as he just said to the spider spirit, he is not kind. At least he will not help others when he sees them suffering. In the past, when he needed help from others and needed others to uphold justice, no one came to help him. And so, let go of the need to help others and respect the fate of others. Of course, Hawk felt that although he was not a good person, he was definitely not a bad person either. So he didn't continue watching the auction, but chose to ignore it. After a while, after browsing some other posts on the black market forum that sold Chitauri weapons, Hawk had a rough estimate of the 5 trophies he had. The weapons of the Chitauri soldiers, that is, the 4 miscellaneous soldiers, are probably worth between 150,000 and 200,000. Of course, this is the price per piece. As for the weapon he seized from the Chitauri captain, there was nothing similar on the forum, but he already had a bottom price in mind. The minimum is 400,000. If we calculate based on the price of 160,000 for a single sword, the total for 4 swords would be 640,000. Adding the sword owned by the team leader, the total would be 1.04 million. Okay, let's just give him 1 million. Hawk thought to himself, then opened an anonymous thread, put his hands on the keyboard, and started typing. For sale are 499 new Chitauri soldier energy weapons, plus 1 Chitauri squad leader energy weapon. The package price is 1 million. If you are interested, please contact me. Click to send. Hawk, who posted the message, originally thought that it might take a long time for someone to reply. However, just as he turned around to pour himself a glass of water, someone contacted him. Ding dong. Hawk listened to the message notification, picked up his water glass, sat back down on the folding stool, and then opened the message. Can I see the photo? Yes, wait a moment. Hawk touched his chin, replied to a message, then got up and went back to his bedroom, then dragged out the weapon he had wrapped in a sheet from under the bed. After pulling out the bed sheet, he looked at the bed sheet that was still wrapped tightly, blinked, then shook his head, lifted the bed sheet, looked at the 5 weapons inside, then took out his mobile phone, took a photo, and got up and went back to the living room. Soon. Photo uploaded successfully. The other party also sent new information quickly. Got it, it looks nice. Thank you, are you interested? Of course. Hawk raised an eyebrow at the other party's reply. Good guy. Are you so lucky that you can sell it? Hawk found it somewhat magical. But then I thought, this is an alien weapon. It doesn't exist on Earth. It is a scarce product, and the ones that are sold out are getting smaller and smaller. So people who see it will naturally try to buy it as soon as possible. At this moment, the other party sent a message again. 1 million is no problem. I'll take it, but we can only do it in person. Hawk looked at this sentence and couldn't help but murmur again. He seemed to have thought of something. Some law enforcement officers, such as the FBI or CIA, like to squat in the bottom-level black market network to conduct phishing law enforcement. So the guy he was chatting with, on the other end of the computer, wasn't he some federal agent excitedly thinking he'd landed a big fish? Hawk hesitated. But soon he was laughing. Who is he? He even dared to break into the Quantico military base, so why should he be afraid of the FBI? If that's the case, then that's perfect. It will just stop one of his thoughts, and then he can let go without any psychological burden. Hawk thought to himself, then put his hands on the keyboard and replied. No problem, you choose the address or I choose it. You choose, I see your IP is in New York City. I happen to be in New York City too. I can trade anywhere in the city. Hawk raised an eyebrow at the message sent by the other party. He ruled out the possibility that the other party might be a federal agent. Right. His computer skills were limited, not that of an expert, so it was easy for the other party to find his location through the IP address. If the other party was a federal agent, then, at about this time, the federal agent should have knocked on his door and yelled, FBI, open the door. Hawk thought about it and subconsciously turned his head to look at the door. Okay. There is no comedic effect. The door didn't slam, and the corridor outside was also very quiet. For some reason, Hawk felt a little disappointed, but then he turned around, looked at the text on the computer, thought about it, and then retyped his reply. How about Calvin from Glendale? Okay, time. Tomorrow morning. Sure, do you want cash or a check? Hee. Hawk couldn't help but laugh at the question the other party asked. Cash, of course. Checks are taxable. Especially for this kind of unexpected income tax, the IRS collects it really harshly. Let's say that. If the unexpected income exceeds $609,300, the IRS will charge 37%. In other words, if he took the check, the IRS would take his $370,000 without doing anything. It's simply robbery. It's legal robbery. Aren't you afraid that the IRS will find problems and come knocking on your door when you file your taxes next year? They can try. This is the money he earned through his own ability. Why should he be charged tax? Hawk said he would not pay the tax no matter what. If others had his ability, they would have lived in a big mansion or a big apartment long ago. He is so law-abiding that he just hopes to make some money to improve his life. If this is the case, and the IRS still wants to rob him of his money, then don't blame him for getting angry. The other party looked at Hawk's reply and seemed to pause. After a while, the other party's reply came out again. Okay, I've just arranged for someone to raise the money. 1 million in cash is no problem. Now there's only one last question left. What? How should I contact you when I get there tomorrow? I will find you. Okay, it's a deal. A word is settled. 3 updates later, please read and collect. End of this chapter. Chapter 57, Anya, my sister. Chapter 57, Anya, my sister. The next day. Monday. Hawk, who had asked for leave in advance last Friday, got up early this day, but did not go directly to the Calvin Cemetery in Glendale. Instead, he put the 5 Chitauri alien weapons in the golf bag he bought yesterday afternoon and took a taxi to a welfare home and a burrito shop not far away. The owner of the shop was an authentic Mexican who seemed to know Hawk. He seemed a little surprised when he saw Hawk. Hawk. But the boss quickly reacted, "Is it the 10th?" Hawk nodded and took out the change he had prepared from his pocket and handed it over. After the boss took the change, he said, "Wait a moment." After a while, 2 freshly baked burritos were packed away. After Hawk took it, he said thank you, then turned around and left with his golf bag on his back. About an hour later, after Hawk walked around the nearby blocks with his golf bag on his back, he twisted the dozen or so extra takeout bags in his hand, hailed a taxi, and headed to Calvin Cemetery. Calvin Cemetery, which spans Brooklyn and Queens, was established in 1849 and is an old cemetery. Logically speaking, after so many years, Calvin Cemetery should be overcrowded. This is indeed the case, but in 1984, Calvin Cemetery saw a turning point. It was bought from the New York City government. Yes, Calvin Cemetery was privatized, and because of this, it began a cleanup. Only 3 months later, Calvin Cemetery announced that it would reopen to the public, and this time, there were many locations available. Don't ask why it suddenly became empty. Anyway, after the Calvin Cemetery announced its reopening, no one protested or opposed it. In order to adapt to the development needs of the times, Calvin Cemetery not only specially opened up an excellent feng shui location with beautiful mountains and waters, and facing north and south for Eastern people, but also undertook burial projects funded by the government. By the time Hawk arrived at Calvin Cemetery, it was already 9 o'clock in the morning. After checking the documents handed over by Hawk, the cemetery guard just took a curious look at the golf bag on Hawk's back, but did not check anything and let Hawk pass. Calvin Cemetery is very large, after all. It spans 2 districts. Hawk, who had been here many times and was very familiar with the place, walked along the path in the cemetery for about 15 minutes and came to a small tombstone. There was a photo on the tombstone, and the photo showed a little girl with a sweet smile. It has her name on it. Anya, 1995. 5, 20-2009. 9. 10 Hawk took off the golf bag containing 5 alien weapons from his back and casually placed it aside. Then he squatted down in front of the tombstone and carefully placed the takeaway bag containing various foods in his hand on the small table in front of the tombstone. Then he looked up at the photo on the tombstone with a sweet smile. He didn't say anything, just looked at it quietly. And then, as he looked at the smiling face in the photo, a smile slowly appeared on his face. A happy smile that only appears when he wakes up in the morning and sees the photo on the bedside table for the first time. After a while, Hawk took out his cell phone from his pocket, which was turned off because he didn't want to be disturbed today, and put it aside. Then he turned around, leaned against the tombstone behind him, and looked at the scenery in front of him. If you look further away, you will find that Hawk's figure seems to be leaning against the photo on the tombstone. Both of them are looking in the same direction, as if they are admiring the scenery in front of them together. If we broaden our perspective even further, consider Midtown High School. Gwen, do you know where Hawk went? Gwen was just about to put her backpack in her locker and go to class when she received a call from her counselor, Mrs. Snow, and was slightly stunned. Didn't he ask for leave from you? I know, but I just got a call from NYU. They're coming to campus today. For Hawk? Yeah, but I can't get through to Hawk. God, it was fine when he didn't have a cell phone, but now he has one and it's turned off. Mrs. Snow was a little speechless on the phone and said that it would be better if she didn't have a cell phone. I thought he might have told you, so do you know where he went? Gwen hesitated. She had some idea of where Hawk was today, but she wasn't sure if Hawk wanted to know that she knew. People from New York University will come today to finalize the list. It would be a shame if Hawk didn't come today. Okay. Gwen heard this and thought about Hawk's preparations for NYU. She also heard that Hawk would miss this opportunity if he didn't come today, so she no longer hesitated and nodded. Mrs. Snow, I'm going to go find Hawk now, but I may need to ask for leave. Mrs. Snow breathed a sigh of relief when she heard this. No problem. After hanging up the phone, Mrs. Snow couldn't help but shook her head, then seemed to think of something and couldn't help laughing. Really? It has to be Gwen. On the other side, Gwen put her books back into the locker after hanging up the phone, took out her backpack, closed the locker door, went to the parking lot, got into her yellow Corolla, started the car, and left the school. Gwen headed straight towards Calvin Cemetery. When she arrived at the cemetery gate and parked her car, she found the manager at the gate and explained her purpose. The cemetery manager also cooperated and opened the gate. Gwen, who seemed to be very familiar with this place, followed the path and came to a corner. After turning the corner, she saw Hawk, who was leaning against a tombstone with one leg stretched out and the other bent, his left hand hanging on his knee. Hawk, who was emptying his mind, listened to the footsteps gradually approaching from a distance. He focused his eyes and turned to look at Gwen, who was walking cautiously from not far away. Gwen looked at Hawk, who smiled after discovering her and couldn't help but feel relieved, then walked over. She didn't immediately mention why she came here to look for Hawk. Instead, she set her eyes on the tombstone. The girl looked exactly like the one in the photo on Hawk's bedside table. Then she glanced at Hawk, who was leaning beside her, and said softly, "Can you introduce her to me?" Hawk smiled slightly and looked sideways at the photo on the tombstone with gentle eyes. Anya. Younger sister. End of this chapter. Chapter 58. The Cheat in Exchange for My Sister and #039's Life. Chapter 58. The Cheat in Exchange for My Sister's Life. My dear sister. We were found by the priest in front of St. Paul's Community Church in Queens. All we had with us at the time was a piece of paper with our dates of birth written on it. Hawk and Anya, these two names were given by the priest of the church. Anya likes her name very much. Hawk, leaning against the gravestone of his sister Anya, did not ask Gwen how she found herself there. This is a stupid question. Hawk spoke in a very soft voice as he spoke, as if he was afraid of disturbing his sister Anya. Anya is very happy. She was always happy from childhood to adulthood, even though she had a hole in her heart and had to go to the hospital from time to time. She was still very happy. Fortunately, he and his sister are orphans, so even if his sister needs to be hospitalized from time to time, he doesn't have to worry about medical expenses. Because the federal and state governments have backstops. When Hawk said this, he glanced at Gwen, who was also imitating his behavior, sitting on the ground with her back leaning against her sister Anya's tombstone. He couldn't help laughing and said later, "I sometimes wondered if it was because we became orphans and could enjoy free treatment that Anya and I were abandoned." Gwen couldn't help but twitch the corners of her mouth when she heard Hawk's words, and then shook her head. "When we found you, there was no birth information." "No." Hawk shook his head. The church staff approached hospitals in New York City, but none of them could meet our needs. Later, a doctor suggested that Anya and I might not have been born in a hospital, but at home. Giving birth at home without going to a hospital is not uncommon in this country. This is especially true in families with strong religious beliefs. Some are even more extreme and will not give birth in a hospital even if a difficult birth results in 2 deaths. But it doesn't matter. I never thought about finding them. Since they chose to abandon me, let's not bother each other. Anyway, there's no problem with Anya and I's nationality. When Hawk said this, he shrugged and continued. Actually, at the beginning, someone wanted to adopt us. But because Anya had a perforated heart, most families gave up on her. Father Moses was a good man, and he didn't want to separate me from my sister, so my sister and I stayed in the church until we were 4 years old. Father Moses was our guardian at the time. But then Father Moses passed away, and Anya and I went to the children's home. Then Anya and I grew up there. The so-called children's home is a family-like living facility where more than a dozen orphans live and are taken care of by staff from nonprofit organizations. Gwen frowned when she heard this. Has there never been an adoptive family? Who would be willing to do that? Hawk chuckled and looked at Gwen. Once Anya leaves the system, she'll have to bear the medical expenses herself. I'm not willing to give up on my sister. A foster family doesn't require me to worry about medical expenses, but the environment in a foster family? Haha. There is a fundamental difference between adoption and foster care. Realistically speaking, most adoptive families do so out of kindness, while most foster families, though not all, do so out of a desire for federal and state government subsidies for orphans. These foster families earn subsidies from the federal and state governments by fostering orphans, and use the money that was originally intended for orphans by the federal and state governments on their own daily expenses. As for orphans, I wish I didn't die. Gwen had heard about some foster family cases from George, so when she heard Hawk's disdain for foster families, she nodded in agreement. And then, when Gwen asked this, she glanced at the time on Anya's tombstone. 1995522009910. Gwen withdrew her gaze, glanced at the surrounding tombstones, and then looked at Hawk. I remember that most of the people buried here are those who died in the battle between Hulk and Abomination in New York City. A hint of coldness flashed in Hawk's eyes, but it quickly disappeared. He looked at Gwen and nodded. Correct. Anya didn't die of illness. She died in the aftermath of the war that night. Really? After hearing Hawk's personal confirmation, Gwen secretly said in her heart, and at the same time she figured out one thing. So you've been working so hard all these years, just to revenge. Hawk turned his head to look at Gwen. After squeezing out these words from between his teeth, the flames of revenge surged from the depths of his eyes. I must repay a favor, and I must avenge a grudge. He was an orphan in his previous life, and although he was also an orphan in this life, he had a sister who had been with him since childhood. So even though the world suddenly changed, even though this was still the Marvel Universe, and he didn't have a system at the time, he didn't feel too confused. Hawk has always been content, so he never thought about causing any trouble in the Marvel Universe. His dream has always been to be content with what he has. There is no system without a system. It's impossible that he will not survive without a system. Hawk has always studied hard, and even when he was in public school, he maintained his academic advantage, which attracted the attention of the admissions teacher of Midtown High School. He was given a scholarship and allowed to move from a public school that focused on happy education to a private education school. His idea was simple: study hard, find a good job, and earn money to treat his sister's illness. So on September 10, 2009, his first weekend at Midtown High School, he took his sister to Times Square and took a photo, recording what Hawk believed at the time would become a turning point in the lives of the two siblings that they would later remember. Result: it was indeed a turning point. It's just such a twist. That day, when Hawk was about to leave on the bus after shopping with his sister Anya, an accident occurred. The Abomination shows up, and then the Hulk shows up. The two monsters instantly fought each other. When Hawk watched the movie before, he thought the fighting scenes between the two were very exciting. But only when he was in the movie could he discover what was hidden behind the excitement. Screams and wails, in the fight between these two monsters, ordinary people have no ability to resist the risk at all. Hawk was among them, pulling his sister Anya along with the crowd and trying to escape. Result: Hulk throws Abomination onto the building, which collapses and falls from the sky towards them. That night, Hawk lost his sister. That moment, Hawk's plugin is online. Envy in exchange for my sister's life. The hatred for killing my sister is irreconcilable. This revenge. Hawk will definitely take revenge. End of this chapter. Chapter 59 also brings sorrow to Hulk and Abomination. Chapter 59, let Hulk and Abomination also mourn. Hawk's face was stern as he recalled what happened on the night of September 10, 2009. A raging fire of revenge burned in his azure eyes. Gwen looked at the anger burning in Hawk's eyes, her expression silent. She didn't seem surprised by this. In fact, she did already know it. She found it from the list of victims of Hulk versus Abomination that night when she asked her father George to do a small favor. After all, that photo was taken when Hawk had just started school. But Hawk never mentioned the girl in the photo, so Gwen guessed that the girl might have met with misfortune. Plus, there is indeed some similarity between Anya and Hawk's eyebrows in the photo. And so, she is very smart, and her father is a sheriff, so it is easy for her to find information. But the Abomination is dead, Hawk. Hawk said nothing. He thought of the Abomination in the movie who was still alive and well, and even in prison, but was taken out for a fight by some old king in the Snow Mountain. He didn't watch the subsequent plot, but if nothing unexpected happens, the hatred will be cleared. If it weren't for his situation, he wouldn't bother to care whether it was whitewashing or blackwashing. But after Hawk experienced that night, he only had one feeling in his heart when he thought about this incident again. Nausea. It's so disgusting. Hawk's heart was boiling with anger at this thought, but he quickly calmed down. He rubbed his face, then looked back at Gwen with a faint smile. By the way, Gwen, is there anything you need from me? The fire that had just risen in his eyes disappeared at this moment, as if everything just now was an illusion. Gwen looked at Hawk, who exuded an aura of revenge in the last second, but turned back to his easygoing state in the next second with a look of worry in her eyes. But she could tell Hawk didn't want to continue the conversation, so she didn't. Gwen smiled slightly. Someone from New York University will be coming to school today. Mrs. Snow couldn't find you, so she had to call me. New York University. Gwen nodded. I heard from Mrs. Snow that today is the day to decide. Let's go. Hawk was about to nod. Next second, his eyes fell on the golf bag thrown to the side. Hawk then looked at Gwen and said, "You go back first. I have an appointment and I plan to sell some things." Gwen, who had already stood up from the ground, heard this and saw the golf bag placed aside, then looked at Hawk. Eyes facing each other. Gwen smiled slightly. "Okay, I'll wait outside for you to go back together." "Ero." Hawk met Gwen's gaze, was silent for a moment, nodded, and then watched Gwen walk towards the forest path. He slowly withdrew his gaze until Gwen disappeared from his sight, then caught a glimpse of the smiling face of his sister Anya's photo on the tombstone and turned his gaze back. For some reason, in his eyes, at this moment, there seemed to be a hint of worry between the brows of his sister Anya and the photo. Hawk smiled slightly, as if he was talking to his sister Anya, but also as if he was talking to himself. "Don't worry, I'll be fine." "You'll be fine. Wait for me. It won't be long before I go to hell to take you home." After Hawk finished speaking, he took a deep breath, and as he exhaled the impurities, his expression completely returned to normal. After getting up from the ground, he hooked the golf bag with his right foot, then reached out and grabbed it firmly, turned around and left without looking back. There is something to say. Condolences. This nonsense is useless. If you're so capable, make the enemy grieve too. Disgusting. Hulk. He will not let any of them go. And not only will he kill these two people, he will also find a way to go to hell to bring back his sister. Someday. Almost. Hawk thought silently in his heart, and then after leaving the area of his sister's tombstone, he saw a woman not far away. A 9-headed woman with a wild temperament, a golden bun, ice blue-gray eyes with deep combing. Just as he looked at the woman, not far away, the woman seemed to notice his gaze and looked over. Confirmed eyes. Hawk nodded his chin slightly. The woman's eyes lit up and then she walked over. When she reached Hawk, she smiled and extended her right hand. Anna. Hawk shook hands, feeling the calluses on the right hand of the woman named Anna. Hawk. After saying this, he retracted his right hand, took the golf bag on his back and brought it in front of him, and opened it directly under the gaze of the woman Anna. Anna's eyes lit up again when she saw the energy weapon, emitting 5 faint lights in the golf bag. She reached out subconsciously. Hawk closed the package again before he could. Money. Hold on. Anna was stunned at first. then she smiled and said something. Then she pressed her right hand on the headset hanging by her ear and gave an order in French. After a while, a tall and strong man in a black suit and sunglasses appeared in sight. The man was pushing a carry-on suitcase that was about 20 inches long. Anna didn't let the man come over. Instead, she went up to him and took the suitcase from him. After letting him leave, she walked back to Hawk and pushed the suitcase in her hand to him, 1 million. As Hawk reached out to take the suitcase, he also handed the golf bag containing 5 weapons to Anna. Accompanied by a clicking sound, the cabin bag is open. Suddenly, Hawk's eyes were met with stacks upon stacks of brand new Franklins, packed full and neatly arranged. Hawk subconsciously took a breath. Can't blame him. He was really used to being poor, so if he suddenly saw so much money, anyone would be a little bit out of control. But Hawk quickly recovered and did not choose to check each bill one by one to see if they were counterfeit. He felt that the other party would not be stupid enough to use counterfeit money to fool a being who possessed Chitauri alien weapons. After Hawk buckled up his suitcase, he stood up and looked at Anna, who had just finished checking the Chitauri alien weapons. So, Hawk spoke first, extending his right hand towards Anna. Happy transaction, Ms. Anna. Anna smiled and shook hands with Hawk. Just call me Anna. Hawk smiled, followed suit, and changed his address. Well, happy trading, Anna. Happy business, Mr. Hawk. By the way, we are friends now, right? Of course. Hawk said indifferently. Anna's smile widened. That's great. As a friend, I've prepared a gift for Mr. Hawk. I hope you'll like it. End of this chapter. Chapter 60, A Gift from Anna. Chapter 60, A Gift from Anna. Gwen sat in the car opposite the cemetery gate, looking at the gate with some worry in her eyes. She had previously known that Hawk's sister died in the battle between Hulk and Abomination in September 2009. Gwen even guessed why Hawk worked so hard to make himself stronger. Although Hawk can become stronger by boxing every day, and even killed Dr. Lizard with one palm, this way of becoming stronger seems unscientific no matter how you look at it. But these are no longer important. The important thing is that guessing it and Hawk confirming it personally are 2 different things. But that's Abomination and Hulk. Hatred is easy to deal with, it's already dead. But can Hawk defeat Hulk? Also, Hulk seems to have fought alongside those superheroes. If Hawk wants to fight Hulk, those superheroes will probably come out to stop Hawk. Can Hawk win? Gwen was a little worried. Yes. She was worried about this, not other things, such as persuading Hawk to give up hatred and to have love and peace instead of hatred. Chinese letter, the one who died was Hawk's only relative in this world. If they really wanted to give up on revenge, then why did the Federation retaliate after the September 11, 2001 attacks? Isn't it about love and peace? Then why seek revenge? Besides, if the Federation really cares about love and peace, would it still fan the flames and create wars all over the world? Gwen scoffed inwardly and rolled her eyes. She is not a silly and innocent girl brought up by public education. She is a smart and innocent girl who has received many scholarships from elementary school to private college. Just as Gwen was frowning and thinking, a long-legged beauty with sunglasses and a delicate face appeared at the entrance of the cemetery. It was Anna. However, unlike the way she had just talked with Hawk with a smile, Anna's delicate face was unusually cold at this moment, and she walked with a strong aura. She was followed by a bodyguard in black with a golf bag on his back. Soon, with the roar of the engine of the fiery red Porsche not far away, Anna drove the sports car and disappeared on the road like a stream of light. The bodyguard in black drove away from the cemetery in a black Chevrolet SUV. After a while, Hawk also appeared at the cemetery gate. Gwen withdrew her gaze from the Chevrolet SUV that disappeared in the rearview mirror, looked at Hawk, who was walking towards her pushing a suitcase, opened the door, and got out of the car. Hawk opened the trunk and put the suitcase inside. Gwen looked at the suitcase that had just been put in, and her car felt a little lower. What is this? Hawk made way. You can take a look. Gwen glanced at Hawk, then took action and opened the suitcase directly. Moment. Gwen's pupils dilated. Hiss. Hawk looked at Gwen, who took a deep breath and said with a smile, I felt the same way when I first saw it. Gwen quickly closed the suitcase, then looked around quickly. After confirming that there was no one around, she looked at Hawk and couldn't help blinking. How come? In exchange for 5 weapons. Hawk shrugged and said this, looking at Gwen with a slight smile on his face. You should know which 5 they are. Gwen was stunned for a moment, then blinked again. I do not know what you're talking about. Temperature. Okay. My acting skills are not good, but your method of returning things to their original places is not good either. On the bedside table is a photo of him and his sister Anya. There was a weapon wrapped under the bed, and it was obviously not the sheet he used to pack it. If nothing unexpected happens, Gwen was so shocked when he saw the weapons under the bed that he opened them and forgot how he packed them. Gwen opened her mouth, suddenly feeling like she'd been caught red-handed. The next second, oh. Gwen quickly pressed the button on the trunk, then said to Hawk with a serious face, The New York University people are here. We have to hurry back to school. Done. She didn't even look at Hawk and turned around and walked towards the driver's seat. However, at the moment she turned around, Beige's earlobes turned slightly red. Looks very cute. Hawk looked at Gwen, who seemed to be running away, and smiled slightly, but did not say anything else. Instead, he opened the car door and got in. Gwen then stepped on the accelerator and drove away from the spot. On the way back to school, Gwen was thinking about being caught, so she deliberately kept a straight face, not even looking at Hawk and not giving Hawk any chance to speak. Describe it in 1 sentence. Gwen said nothing and just drove. Hawk sat in the passenger seat and recalled what Anna had just said before she left. Gift. What gift? Soon, the journey from the cemetery to Midtown High School, which originally took about 45 minutes, was completed in just 30 minutes thanks to Gwen's extraordinary performance today. Gwen, who had just hung up the phone with Mrs. Snow, quickly parked the car and said to Hawk, The people from New York University are already in the office. Hawk nodded, pushed the door open and got out. Gwen, who also got out of the car, called out to Hawk and made a cheering gesture. Come on, Hawk. It is good. Hawk responded and walked towards Mrs. Snow's office. Gwen didn't go along. After all, this is an interview at NYU, not Berkeley. Moreover, interviews like this are quite formal, and it would be inappropriate for outsiders to follow. Dong dong. Enter. Mrs. Snow. After hearing the voices coming from the office, Hawk pushed the door open and walked in. He glanced at the meticulously dressed middle-aged man sitting on the sofa, then looked at Mrs. Snow. Are you looking for me? Mrs. Snow waved to Hawk, and after Hawk closed the door, she introduced him to the middle-aged man who stood up from the sofa. This is Mr. Gary Cooper. Mr. Cooper is an admissions officer at New York University. Gary, this is the Hawk I was telling you about. Hawk quickly extended his right hand. Mr. Cooper. Hawk. Gary, the admissions officer from New York University, shook Hawk's hand and smiled, then returned to his serious demeanor. I saw your scholarship application. I came here today to ask a few questions. Please take a seat. Hawk nodded and then sat on the sofa opposite. Gary Cooper sat down again and took back the notebook he had just put aside. He looked at Hawk sitting opposite him and started the main topic of the day. Today is both an inspection and an interview. If the examination is satisfactory, the admissions teacher, who has a great deal of autonomy, can announce the results in advance. Of course, the premise is that you are good enough. After an hour, Gary Cooper closed the notebook in his hand and then looked at Hawk under Mrs. Snow's expectant gaze, then smiled, stood up, and extended his right hand towards Hawk. Congratulations, Hawk, and welcome to NYU. SHH, this is awesome. When Mrs. Snow heard this, she covered her mouth excitedly. Hawk was also stunned, then quickly stood up and shook the right hand that Gary handed over. Thank you, Mr. Cooper. Just thank my colleague Anna. She put your information in front of me. End of this chapter. All right, legends, that's it for today. If you're ready for the next chapter, smash that like button and flood the comments right now. Remember, we've got 3 days to prove this story needs to continue. Subscribe so you don't miss the drop, and I'll meet you in the next audiobook.